That is your cue, my friend. Have a good meeting.
All right. Thanks, Seth. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the June 21st school committee meeting back to public session. Sorry. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, the Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. This meeting will be recorded and will be posted following the meeting. Public comments will be available through Zoom, and community members can also email me at mlong@cit.org with any questions. For those of you that didn't see it last week, the governor extended that order to allow us to meet remotely through April 1st of next year. So that's why we're able to meet remotely tonight and continue to do so at least through April 1st if we choose to. So moving on, actually before we get into the agenda, I know Superintendent Burkhead sent an email earlier today and took some of the things that I wanted to say, but obviously today was the last day of school. It was a very different year, and I'm sure a lot different than what we were expecting even 20 months ago when last year's school year started. And I just wanted to say thank you to our staff and our students for really, picking up and running with, all of the issues that we had and just being able to give our students the, some kind of semblance of normalcy in school. And especially when we went back fully in person earlier, a couple months ago, it made a huge difference, at least in my kids' lives, and I know others that I knew. And I know Superintendent Burkhead had said in his email that, this was a we thing, and it definitely was. So on behalf of the committee, I just want to say thank you to our staff for everything they did across the board, our students for really, doing a good job of doing school remotely and then coming back in person, either as a hybrid model or fully back, and then obviously the community for helping us be able to really be able to do so and, work through the issues that we faced through COVID and this pandemic. So getting into the agenda, the first item we have tonight is the recognition of our retirees. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Burkhead.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I'm just going to list them, and as I guess I'll list them in order that we have them here. If I know we've asked our principals to join us if they have any words prepared. We'll just go down the order. So first I have Elizabeth Kramer, grade 4 at Hatherley. Years of service to Scituate is 34. Is Miss Ward here?
Yes, she is. 34 amazing years. Can you imagine? Liz is a tremendous teacher. She has touched the lives of so many students. Think about 34 years and how many changes have come through education that Liz has pivoted and accepted. But a year ago, that really became true. When it was time to go remote, Liz was like, I'm not sure. She rose to the occasion. She learned everything that she needed to learn, and her kids continued to grow. Liz is an active member of our staff as well as with the kids. If we need a volunteer, Liz is one of the first people to be there. As a new principal in this district 3 years ago, Liz was absolutely the person that I leaned on. She knows the system inside and out, and she's here for kids. And that's the best thing you can say about a teacher. Liz?
I'm sorry. If Liz, if you can just raise your hand. There we go. I see it. And there you go, Liz.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Julie. It's been a privilege to work in Scituate for my career. I've met a lot of great staff and colleagues, and most of all, families and students. I appreciate those kind words, and I wish everyone in Scituate well, and thank you for taking the time to recognize me.
Thank you, Liz, so much. Appreciate it, and thank you, Ms. Ward. Next, we have Susan Drew from Cushing. 15 and a half years of service in Scituate Public Schools. Ms. Moffett.
I have the privilege of speaking on behalf of, speaking about Sue Drew. Sue Drew has been an amazing member of our staff for so many years. As a teacher, she is one of those people who's compassionate, who's kind, and who has the most patience of anyone I've ever known. She was really instrumental in teaching hundreds of our students to be able to read. With a couple of things that she used to, for kids who are learning high frequency words, she would refer to the claw, in which they would have to grab the word and pull it back to own it. And then her reading strategies, which I always thought was really creative, is she would use Drew's clues. So that was also really fabulous, and was able to hook and engage our students. They really looked forward to working with her, and she really looked forward to working with them. She was very passionate about the work that she did with our students, and they knew that she loved them, and she loved each and every one of them. So she I also want to speak to her about her as a staff member. You're talking about a woman who comes into work, and no matter what was happening, especially over this past year, she had a positive outlook. She was just very patient with us as well. She was also a really great confidant for me. Every once in a while, she'd come in, she'd close the door, she'd sit down, and she'd tell me what I was doing wrong. And I loved that because it was very honest, and she had the pulse of the school. She also has this really soothing mannerism, so she was really great about delivering not favorable news, but I thought it was always great because it was always very calm and positive, but even though afterwards I'd go, oh, I don't know if I have to deal with that or not. So I appreciated that from Sue. She's, for everybody who she interacted with, she was kind, she's considerate, she's never had a bad word to say about anyone, she's passionate. And from a principal's perspective, as well as from a perspective of a colleague who taught in this district, she had an amazing impact on so many of us on a professional level. So I am very honored and privileged that I was able to work with Sue in different capacities, and that she ended her career and I was able to be her principal during those times. So Sue, thank you so much for all of your years of dedication. I still love Sue, Drew's Clues, and really liked the story about the claws. So thank you so much for all that you've done. And Seth, can you unmute her for me?
Sue, you can unmute yourself. Sue, you are co-host. You can unmute yourself down the bottom left-hand corner. You got it. Right there. Yep.
It's been a while that I've been on Zoom. I am just so happy to be here and to have the recognition that people think about, and it's wonderful to feel like I've ended my career, and I have such wonderful memories about it. I miss the kids, I miss my colleagues. Cushing is a special place because no matter what your position is in the building, everyone it just feels a sense of community for everyone. And I'm so happy that I ended my career there. The last 15 years were just wonderful, filled with memories. And I appreciate being in Scituate. I appreciate this night, and I wish us all well and health.
Thanks, Sue. We love you. You'll always be a member of the Cushing family.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Ms. Moffett. Next, we have Kathy Elich, the STEM Director, STEM Chair for the elementaries. I'm going to have Ms. Arnold speak on her behalf.
I'm sorry, Ms. Arnold, you should be good now.
It's usually me with the technology, so I'm glad that for once it wasn't. It's my honor and privilege to talk about Kathy Elish tonight. There's so many great superlatives. There's one I could use to describe Kathy and her dedication to Scituate. I'd start by saying, and this will sound a lot like my Thursday Thoughts last week, if Bill Nye is the science guy, Kathy Elish is the science woman. She knows so much about science. She projects that passion for science and knowledge. She shares with everyone. She projects that knowledge of science, and it's infectious. She starts talking about science, and it was funny because she goes on and on as if we mere mortals understand what she's saying. And she understands it perfectly, but she's always willing to stop and give us some description and more information. She's passionate about helping teachers teach science and kids how to do science. And that's one of the most important things as an educator, right? To get people to do science, to do math. And speaking of math, she has what's the right word? She's made an incredible impact on the elementary math curriculum and program. Under her leadership, we adopted a new math program 2 years ago, Eureka Math. Kathy did all the things I asked her to do. She went through the correct process to adopt the program. And she was really thoughtful. She involved teachers, she involved the principals, and you couldn't ask for more from an educator. Secondary science, when she was department chair in secondary, she expanded secondary science course offerings and injected them with increased rigor. So in her 8 years in Scituate, she has been the PK through 5 science and math curriculum coordinator. And previous to that, she was the high school department chair for STEM. She's truly an amazing person, an amazing educator, and a brilliant person. Her compassion and dedication to the students and to her craft and the subject matter content area, it's boundless. And the one thing I will say in closing about Kathy that is most notable, or not most notable, but among the most notable, is her tenacity. Her tenacity to get things done when she knows it's best for kids. And so Kathy, it has been an honor to be your supervisor and an honor and blessed to be your friend. So thank you for all you have done for Scituate, and happy retirement to you.
Thank you, Ms. Arnold, and congratulations, Kathy.
Thanks.
Next.
I was just going to say, for those of you that have been on the school committee for a while, like Mike Long, Peter, I appreciate, because as I've been in my role as the elementary person and as a high school person, you guys have been really supportive, because we have made a lot of changes. I think they've been good changes for kids. I think you guys know I am passionate about curriculum. I always make decisions based on, if it was one of my own 4 kids, what would I want to see happen? And as I look around, it's been kind of cool, because I've had the opportunity to work with George at the high school, and Marlene and Sharon and the elementary principals and Ryan Beatty. And so as I look around, it's like because of my roles, I've really been able to work with a lot of different people in the district. And I think we've made some really good impact and changes for kids. So thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, we have George Haddad with Scituate High School, French teacher for 23 years in Scituate. Dr. McGuire.
Yes, thank you. So George has been with us for 23 years. In that time, he started the School to Career internship program, which is so important for our students to be able to delve into and investigate possible career choices. And he's been a recipient of the Bridge Builders Award, the highest level of recognition from his peers. He's also helped lead exchange trips to France and to Spain. Early on, George invited Scituate senior citizens to the high school cafeteria for sit-down meals prepared by students who also served and cleaned up. More recently, he's been known by faculty for collecting funds to provide Thanksgiving dinners to those who need a little extra support around the holidays, impacting hundreds of families along the way. George has been a union representative who has supported his colleagues as well, and his tireless work to help others, students and staff alike, will leave a lasting impact at SHS. He has been an incredible educator and is part of the fabric of SHS. We appreciate all that he has done for us, and we know we have big shoes to fill now with his retirement. George is very excited about the prospect of not knowing what he wants to do day by day, which is the beauty of retirement. We wish him so much enjoyment in making these big decisions and in the fun of the little things in the days and years to come. Thank you so much, George.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. I've thoroughly enjoyed coming to work at Scituate High School. I've met a lot of great staff, a lot of great families, students. I've met a lot of friends. I've got to know people inside Scituate High School and outside. And I will miss people, but you know, it's a new day. So we'll see what happens. And I want to thank everybody for tonight, for the recognition and the time. And I wish everybody all the best as they move forward in September 2021.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next, we have Marlene Hoffman from Scituate High School Guidance, 18 years in the district. Dr. McGuire?
Yes, in Marlene's 18 years, she has worked helping numerous students, hundreds of students, get into college and make it through their high school years at the high school. She was an advisor to the peer educators and has served as a mentor to new counselors. She's been a member of our crisis team and also has been a union building representative. Marlene most recently ran a transition support group for transfer students, helping them to find their way at the high school. Her retirement plans include visiting her kids, playing a lot of pickleball, and traveling, hoping to avoid some of the tougher aspects of winter in New England. Marlene, we wish you the best in your competitive pickleball endeavors and so much enjoyment with your family. Every day is a snow day now, Marlene, or a beach day. It's all how you plan it. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, everyone. It's really been a privilege. I'm also a resident of the town, and I know how hard all of you work, and you will always have my support. So thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Janine LeBlanc from the Gates Middle School. 29 years of service in Gates.
And those have been 29 wonderful years for Janine. Janine is one of those teachers that you will never forget if you're a student in her class or a parent who has the privilege of having a student in her class. Her commitment to continuous improvement is evident in everything she does. She will be the first to laugh at herself because she doesn't necessarily know the newest technology, but she will then spend 6 hours mastering it before her lesson the next day. She's dedicated to her students. She has a really soft spot for struggling readers and kids who need extra support and love. She can frequently be found on Friday afternoons in the way back in the 8th grade hallway with a group of typically boys who need help with reading. She reads out loud and builds relationships through content, but through also really caring about different people. She brings 100% of herself to work every day. She takes every single one of her responsibilities incredibly seriously. Her sense of humor is what she will be remembered for. You cannot sit next to Janine LeBlanc at a meeting because she will have you laughing the entire time. So we will miss her sense of humor. She has big shoes to fill in our English department, and it's been a true privilege to work with her in these past 29 years at Gates. So congratulations to Janine, and I don't know if she's able to make it tonight.
I do not believe she is here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Next, we have Laurie Mahoney from Jenkins, 21 years in the district. Ms. Long.
Hi, so I have the privilege of speaking about Laurie Mahoney. She is a kind-hearted, devoted teacher. She has a wonderful sense of humor, an infectious laugh. She has an amazing environment in her room. Students just love her, enjoy her. Her favorite times are reading aloud with the students and just being there with them. She is always asking about other people and how they're doing, making sure those around her are okay. She started her career actually at the Cushing School in 2nd grade. And then when Jenkins had opened, she came to Jenkins in 2nd grade. So then she spent those 18 years here at the Jenkins School. She will be truly missed, and she just has such a passion and a positive way about her. So we wish her well in her retirement.
I think Ms. Mahoney's here, so we'll move on. Thank you, Ms. Long. Next, we have Tim McAlarney from Wampatuck, 15 years in the district. Ms. Reardon.
Hi. So I have the privilege of speaking about Mr. McAlarney tonight, who started at Wampatuck as a student teacher in 2005 and has been a 4th grade teacher for the majority of his career. He has loved his time as a teacher and building relationships with students. In the beginning of his career, he worked as a paraprofessional. He worked with a paraprofessional named Julie Levanchi, who once told him that for some students, the best part of their day is coming to school. Tim has kept that in the forefront of his mind every day since, and he strives to create a respectful, rigorous, and nurturing learning environment for his students in his classroom. When I asked him about the highlights of his time at Wampatuck, he remembered teaching the 4th grade immigration unit with Sue Toomey and Antoinette Fitzgerald, hosting the immigration night for students and parents, and it was an event that brought the whole school community together. He has enjoyed sharing his passion of reading and celebrating great books. He's inspired many, many students to become lifelong readers. He loves science and has been teaching an embryology unit for most of his time at Wampatuck, where he hatches eggs every year. It is the highlight of many students in his class, and many of them come back and talk about their time in his class hatching those eggs. He is excited to retire this year and begin his next adventure, but he is sad to see his time end at Wampatuck and to leave the students behind. So from Wampatuck, we wish him all the best in his retirement. And I do know he is not here this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Reardon. Appreciate it. Next, we have Kristin Mcgran from Hatherley, grade 4, 30 years.
Yes, Kristin came to us after teaching for 5 years in Brockton, and then in 1991, she joined the Hatherley staff. Throughout that time, and the time that I've known her, Kristin is the type of teacher that continually evolves. At first, we have all these new pieces coming along. She gives a good oh my, and then moves right along and dives in. And boy, that's impressive for someone. This afternoon, when the kids were all going out the door, the hugs were flying. That's the impact she has on kids. One child went to get on the bus and had to run back just one more time to see Mrs. Mcgran before she got on the bus. And boy, if you can touch a student's heart in that way, that is unbelievable. So we absolutely wish Mrs. Mcgran the best. She is right now trying to figure out what her next chapter is. She wants to be open-minded and go with the flow until she decides what's next. I do know that Kristin is not on the call this evening. Congratulations to her.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Next, we'll move on to Sharon Moore, Scituate High School Guidance, 13 years. Dr. McGuire.
So Sharon went back to graduate school at BU to become a school counselor after her oldest son graduated from high school. And she's always appreciated that former principal Donna Nuzzo and department chair Tammy Rundle took a chance on hiring her with no experience. They must have known then what a find they had before them, as Sharon has gone on to a wonderfully impactful career at the high school, acting as our students' greatest champion during their years with us. She's been involved in all aspects of the high school as advisor for the National Honor Society, counselor for the Scituate High School Evening Program, member of the Student Assistance Team, and a homeroom advisor over the years. Sharon plans to become more involved in Scituate Community Christmas, helping to take care of her grandson, spending family time with her family in Maine, and finally training her puppy Woody. We wish you, Sharon, so much luck in this endeavor and so much enjoyment from your family and time in this next chapter. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Lisa. it's been a privilege and an honor to be able to work at Scituate High, and I feel so lucky that I've been able to work with such wonderful educators. And as Ms. Hoffman and some of our other retirees, I live in Scituate, and I'm proud and pleased to support the Scituate Public Schools. So thank you so much for all your support too, Lisa, because you have been a godsend to the high school, and you came in at the pandemic and helped us get through it. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Wonderful. Next, we have Jody Skype, Gates, Special Education, 20 years.
Jody has been an advocate for students who need one the most. She writes incredibly thorough IEPs to ensure that students are supported appropriately. She's committed to working through the most difficult challenges and is always willing to try new things, new and different ways to benefit students and to help them to succeed. She's been a really strong partner to regular education teachers with whom she has worked, specifically the 7th grade teachers, all of whom have reported learning a great deal from her about how to break down complex topics and support students from diverse backgrounds while holding them to high expectations. Jody is known for her kindness, her patience, and her integrity, and it can be seen in every interaction she has with both students and colleagues. Jody is excited to retire and is also looking forward to trying new things. We will miss her next year, so congratulations to Jody. She also was unable to be here this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. Next, we have Barbara Eucnis from Jenkins, nurse, 18 years.
Nurse Eucnis has been amazing this year. She gave us one more year this year to be with us and help lead us through this very different year. She is so friendly and kind to everyone she comes into contact with. She builds great relationships with families, which are so important as the nurse to be able to do that. Even takes care of us staff as well. We all know that the nurse doesn't only take care of just the students in the building, but she truly takes care of all of us. Has really been an asset to the Jenkins School and to keep us all in school and safely learning, especially this year. She talks about how students that have graduated have, told her stories, remember when, and it's just so touching to her to be able to hear those stories and know the lasting impact she's made on so many. She's most looking forward to being with her triplets that are older, getting married, having grandkids. So she's looking forward to that. But she is in Scituate and has told us she will sub for us when we need her. So she's not off the hook that easy. So she'll be around. But thank you, Barb, for your 18 years of service, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. It's just been the most awesome 18 years I've ever had. I love Scituate community. I love the Jenkins family. I work with the most awesome group of nurses I've ever met in my life. I'm just so lucky for that. I just have truly loved coming to school every day of my career. Well, maybe a few not this year, but other than that, it's been awesome. And thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Barbara. Next, we have Ruth Chisholm with a school bus driver with a record 46 years. I believe Dr. Dutch is going to make a comment.
Hi, it's my pleasure to speak on behalf of Ruth. As you know, I'm new to the district this year, and Ruth was not able to drive the buses this year due to her own health issues. But as you reflect, so haven't met her. That said, when you reflect on 46 years of driving a bus, and you think of all the families that she has impacted in that short little window of 15 to 30 minutes each way, every day, and the mothers, the fathers, the grandparents potentially, who she drove to and from school, her impact is significant. So we thank you, Ruth, for all that you've done for children and the families of Scituate over the last 46 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dutch. Next, we have Donald Pipes, Gates custodian, 18 years.
Yes, so Mr. Pipe's 18 years of service to the Scituate Public Schools. He worked at Gates, he worked at Scituate High School, he worked at Wampatuck. He is a veteran who has given many years of service to our country. In his work, he always took great pride. He was always willing to help anyone that needed it. Mr. Pipe is a conversationalist. When he wasn't working hard, he would be glad to pull a chair over and share his stories, voice his opinions on current events, and also share great stories about his children and grandchildren. He developed strong relationships with his colleagues. We have missed him since he retired in the beginning of the year, and we wish him all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Next, Anthony Schiavo, custodian, Hatherley, 18 years.
And when Tony entered the Scituate school system in 2003, he had the opportunity, he touched many buildings within the school system. I know that he had been at the Gates as well as the Wampatuck before landing at Hatherley. Tony has always pitched in with his teammates to make sure that the Hatherley school is ready for all of the students, but never more than this year. This year, as you all know, we had to rely on our custodians. We had a tall order for them, and they all reached it, including Tony. We were very lucky to have Tony with us this year in order to keep all of the kids safe and the environment, the best learning environment possible. Tony, I know, is not able to be here tonight, but we do certainly congratulate him.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. And finally, we have Marcia Allen from Central Office, Administrative Assistant, 21 years in Scituate. Ms. Arnold.
So another person I'm fortunate to be able to speak about. Marcia has had many hats working in Scituate Public Schools in those 21 years. She was administrative assistant for the Early Childhood Center. She then became the administrative assistant for the Director of Special Education. And 7 years ago, Marcia transitioned to become the administrative assistant to the assistant superintendent. And I can speak from experience that all of her assistants, she's knowledgeable, she's caring. I've never met anybody with more honesty and is more earnest and has more integrity. She's an exemplary administrative assistant and truly person. She balances a lot of different things. She asks questions for clarifications. She wants to do her best, and her goal for everything she's done is for our students to be successful. And when people call, she listens intently, she hears them, she has compassion, and wants to make sure that she can help them solve their problem, and if not, get the right person for them to be able to solve the problem. Being an administrative assistant in a central office is, you don't see everything all the time that people are doing. We're kind of behind the scenes. And, you know, at schools, you can see what the administrative assistants and secretaries do all the time. But at central office, it's hard to see all of the things they contribute. And Marcia is responsible for all SMART PD, so making sure everybody has their course credits, their workshop PDPs, their seminars credited. She brings together all of the professional development within the central office for the assistant superintendent, and just it's so many more. And also, she's a fabulous editor. I always run everything by her before I send it out, and she's invaluable. So she's just a wonderful person. I'm honored to have worked with her, lucky to know her, and her retirement's a loss for Scituate, but I hope you all the best, Marcia. I know you and Arnie and Rachel are going to have a great life together.
I thought I saw Marcia
She is there. She's muted.
Marcia, if you were there, you can unmute yourself. Just go down the bottom left-hand corner. There's a mute
There
button.
she is.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Jen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for working for you. It's been a pleasure working for Scituate Public Schools for the whole 21 years I worked there. And being part of the Scituate community has been very, very nice and very rewarding. I've met a lot of nice people, a lot of talented people that's helped me throughout the 21 years as well. So moving forward, I'm just looking towards my next chapter, hopefully doing some traveling, and hopefully we can continue to stay safe and move forward in the right direction and have everybody stay healthy. Again, thank you for taking the time to recognize me tonight. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I will miss everybody at Scituate Public Schools.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you, Jen. And that concludes our retirees. I do also just want to mention and thank Ms. Jen Arnold, who will be leading the district this year after 10 years of dedication and commitment, both as a principal at Jenkins and at central office. One of the first people I met, just a kind, honest, dedicated individual who always puts kids first, but also adults as well. So Jen, thank you for all you've done. A lot of the characteristics and traits you shared about Marcia are also inherent in you, and it just made our office a really special place. So I want to thank you both. And for the retirees tonight, I did some math, and you can probably double check it, but I have a collective number of 367.5 years of service. Dedication to kids in the most important, in my opinion, profession in the world. The impact you've had on the kids over those 367.5 years will impact us for generations, so thank you. A quick story, as a former football coach, I had hired one of my former head coaches and phys ed teachers who had retired and come on and wanted to keep busy, so he was my assistant. And every day we'd be scrambling from class to put on our gear and get out from the locker room, and he'd stroll up, and he was always tan, 365 days a year. He'd walk on the field tan, it'd be snow and sleet, and every day we had a running joke or a conversation. I'd say, "Hey coach, how are you today?" And his response every single day was, "I haven't had a bad day yet." And he'd smile. And so I want to wish you all good days moving forward for the rest of your next journey. And again, I haven't seen an unhappy retired person yet. So good luck and thank you very much. So I'll turn it back over to Chairman Long.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Burkhead, and for all the principals for speaking on behalf of your staff. Just to echo what Superintendent Burkhead said, I mean, it's been, I've worked with a number of you over the years, being a school committee member, several of the teachers that are retiring, my children had, and just seeing the hard work and the dedication that they put in year over year is a great thing. And while it's, great that you all came to our meeting tonight, it's bittersweet that your time with, as an educator in Scituate is ending. Obviously, you're always welcome back, and you're welcome to stay as long as tonight's meeting as you'd like, but I'm sure you're, it's been a long year, but thank you all again. It's, this is one of the great things we get to do at the end of the year. It's just, send off our retirees and thank them for their hard work and service. And just again, thank you all for everything you've done.
Mike, if I could say something real quick.
Yeah, of course.
And I too, like Bill and Mike, want to thank all of you. I think only all of you. I was here in this position when each of you were hired and introduced to the school committee. So it's an honor to still be here and watch you retire. And I wish you all nothing but a healthy and long and happy retirement. And I was thinking that as each of you spoke and is that I think each of you individually and as a group is the reason why I consider Scituate to be a fantastic school system. And it would not be without each and every one of you, and whether a teacher, a guidance counselor, nurse, office staff, custodian, all of it together creates a good school system. And I feel we have the best, and it's because of all of you. And I greatly appreciate your dedication and the years you gave to Scituate, and I wish you nothing but the best.
All set, Mike. Okay. So moving on in our agenda, we have an acceptance of gifts from the Scituate Education Foundation. We have Ms. Sheila, I apologize if I butchered your name, Kuxis, on the meeting, so I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, I'm Sheila Coxtis. Thanks for having me here today. I am happy to be able to represent the Scituate Education Foundation and all those who work so hard to support these grants and make these grants possible. So I want to first, before I talk a little bit about some of the grants that are going to the Scituate Public Schools, I really want to thank Kim Peters, Cindy Seesaw, and Superintendent Burkhead for their support in this, because we couldn't do it without them. They all have a part in these grants, and it really is a team effort in that. This year, the Scituate Education Foundation received 12 applications from Scituate Public Schools and funded 7 of those. 4 of those 7 were funded absolutely fully, and the other 3 were funded almost fully, but not quite. We also have one other nonprofit, Citroen Art Center, that has a grant that will support the Gates School as well. So really, you're looking at 8 grants that are going into the Scituate Public Schools this year. 2 are going to Gates individually. 2 are going to the high school individually. 1 is shared between the Gates and the high school. And then there are 2 that are among all schools. The grants ranged from $5,455 down to $400 for a total of $22,929.11. So that was a good amount going out to the schools this year. So I wanted just to take a quick moment, if you have it, just to let you know about the 7 grants that we are given to the Scituate Public Schools this year. The first one is going into the Gates Middle School. It's called Character Strong Middle School Social Emotional Learning Curriculum. The second one is developing cultural proficiency among Scituate residents, students, and families in the Scituate Medco Family Partnership Program. We have the Scituate First Robotics Competition Team that we are supporting this year to get, I think it's their 2nd year, so their registration fee. Then one of the favorites that really had a lot of conversation was the Gates Middle School 9-hole disc golf course. Now, I didn't know what disc golf was, but everybody else who was reviewing it did and was so excited. And when I've talked after this was done with friends, they're like, you didn't know disc golf? It's so much fun. So I think there's a little bit of some talk in the town about that this is going to be a good thing. So I'm looking forward to finding out what disc golf is. We gave a grant of almost $5,500 to the Gates Middle and Scituate High School Drama. So they're designer sets for stage and new set construction and costuming equipment. So that's going to be giving the materials to the drama departments in the Gates and the high school to help build new sets and costumes. We gave classroom libraries as windows and mirrors for children, which will benefit all 4 elementary schools. And the last will be supporting the Credit for Life Fair at Scituate High School. So those are all of the grants that'll go to Scituate Public Schools this year, as I said, for a total of just under $23,000. So we appreciate everyone's help and everyone's support. And when we have some fundraisers, we really appreciate you participating in those fundraisers as well, so that we can continue to do the work we're doing. Does anybody have any questions?
If there are no questions, I guess it's just thank you for all the work that SEF does, because that's, that $23,000 definitely goes to good use, and goes right to the benefit of our students and staff. So thank you for what you do as well. And I hope when it's built, you get to plan the disc golf course.
I hope so too. It should be fun to watch that go in and just to see. I think the community support will be great, because I think it should be open for the whole community. So it looks. I hear you use a Frisbee or something with it. That's I think what I heard. So sounds like fun. So we support. We really appreciate everyone's support in this. And we appreciate the time to come here tonight to tell you a little bit about it.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Sheila.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, thanks.
Chairman Long, may I just
Yeah.
comment? Yeah, thank you. Sheila, thank you, and to all the other volunteers of the Scituate Education Foundation. I continue to be blown away how many groups of parents and community members rally around fundraising and organization to do cool things and then offer the money back to our educators that benefit directly to students. So not only do we have a supportive budget by the town, we also have supportive money coming in for very special programming that Sheila so eloquently talked about. I sat down with Sheila, we went through all the requests, and I also want to thank those that put the time and effort into making those requests. A lot of work went into that, and to receive almost $23,000 worth of support for, I mean, really amazing programs for kids that we may not be able to support in the general budget, really just accentuates the greatness of our district and is what it's all about. So please, on behalf of the district, I want to thank you and all the members of the Educational Foundation for that great work.
Well, thank you. We're looking forward to some more in-person fundraising this year. And I'm looking forward to maybe working with some of the schools who might have some questions to really, help them to put more grants in so that we can grant more things. I was a principal for 22 years, and I know how important these grants are. So I look forward to doing whatever I can to help support getting more of these in place in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So next on the agenda, we have the school improvement plans for the middle school and high school. So I'll turn it over to Principal Beatty and Dr. McGuire.
Mike, can I ask a question first?
Yeah.
Do we have to vote on those, the gifts?
Yep, good call. I apologize for that. Did we have a motion from the school committee to accept the gifts from SEF?
I can read it. I make a motion to accept with great appreciation the generous grants given to the Scituate Public Schools from the Scituate Education Foundation.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
These two. So there's a roll call vote. Brandolini?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
Long, yes. Hayes? Mike?
I'm sorry, my internet went crazy for a minute, but yes.
No problem. Gates?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for catching that, Janice. So now we'll turn it over for the improvement plan.
All right, good evening. I have the pleasure of sharing the Gates Middle School highlights from the Gates Middle School School Improvement Plan this year. The feeling of Gates Middle School today was one of great pride as students walked in, as parents dropped their kids off, as teachers, wrapped up what they were doing. And I think we have a lot to take pride in. Not only did we survive this year, we did a lot of great things. And it's my goal tonight to highlight some of those great things that were done by our students, our staff, and our families. So I'm going to share my screen. And everyone able to see?
Yes, we see it. Looks great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we had two goals this year. These were the goals that were the through line for all schools in the district. Our first one related to our Safe and Strong reopening plan. At Gates, we designed different schedules and structures that optimized learning. Over the course of the year, we went through 3 schedules, remote, hybrid, a combination of both. And each one of them had its pros and cons, and we adjusted as we went through. Throughout the year, we designed and administered surveys for all stakeholders, parents, students, staff, to help us identify the strengths and challenges of each model. We then analyzed those results and put action steps in place to grow the challenge areas and to kind of continue the things that were working. We designed several workshops for parents and caregivers this year. The first one was a partnering during the pandemic, which helped parents to understand kind of the expectations that the school had for students when they were outside of school learning remotely. But then also provided resources for how to work with students during this time when they're isolated and away from the building. We also had a parent and caregiver support group that mirrored our advisory curriculum, which was used to help enhance child and adult relationships, because many parents were sharing with us that raising children during a pandemic was challenging. And so the work that we were doing in our advisory group about building relationships and sharing power and expressing care, we designed one to replicate our curriculum for parents and caregivers, and that was well attended over a course of a 6-week period. Throughout the year, we took a look at our Wednesdays. Wednesdays in the beginning of the year were different as they allowed for a little more flexibility and a little more opportunities for assistance and enrichment. As we moved back to the full day model in April and the Wednesdays went away, we continued to find ways to offer assistance and provide enrichment to our students through different periods we have added to our schedule, which allowed students to get what they needed during the school day as opposed to staying after school for the extra support and enrichment that they needed. We collected data. We used our observations to make adjustments to how we were teaching and what we were teaching to improve students' performance and engagement. I believe it was about probably 4 weeks ago where the department heads kind of provided an overview of the curriculum. And although much of the curriculum stayed the same, the way we instructed it had to be different because of the models that we were going through. We created opportunities for our students and families who were fully in the fully remote model, either temporarily or permanently throughout the year, to remain connected to both students and staff at Gates. We held lunches for Cohort C. In our field day that we just had, we invited all students in that remote model to an adapted model of our field day, and many students took us up on that opportunity. So it was important for us to keep everybody connected throughout this fragmented year. And then finally, and the one that was the most important to us, was that we used data, both academic data, attendance data, behavior data, to design interventions to promote the growth of students and families. And we can successfully say that many of our students, if not all of them, grew in all different ways throughout the course of this year as a result of all of the action steps that everyone, whether it's students, families, parents, staff, put into play to help us with our safe and strong reopening and learning model. So those are some of the highlights from this first goal that we put in place this year. We feel as though we very much were successful with this goal. And we are very proud of everybody that was involved in kind of helping us to make this a success. Our second goal deals with the pillar of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We did a lot of great things this year related to this. We started the year by administering an assessment to the staff at Gates to kind of get a sense of what their needs were as we started talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Things like, what are things you'd like to learn about? What are things that you think would make you a better teacher if you had a better understanding of? And so we collected that information, and from there, used that to identify some of the top areas where our staff wanted to grow. We supported the Gates Middle School Identity and Inclusion Staff Group to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We have a core group of probably 15 staff members that are really committed to this work and interested in talking about it and interested in helping kind of our efforts as we continue on to take action steps to make us a more inclusive school. We also, I think, are most proud of our student-led TIDES group. A group of students came forward and said they wanted to create a group, and they named it TIDES, standing for Tolerance, Inclusivity, Diversity, and Equity. And this group of students gets together about once a week and just talks about issues at our school relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also kind of sharing ideas of how to make our school a more inclusive environment. This group has grown tremendously. It started off very small. It's now one of our biggest groups at school. And we know that if we are going to continue to increase inclusivity at our school, it's something that we can't just have adults do. Our students need to be a part of this puzzle. They need to be leaders. And we're really happy and proud of our students this year who have taken action and become part of our group. We have incorporated diverse voices and celebrated differences in our advisory curriculum and through public displays. We have presented specific data on economically disadvantaged students to our RTI groups, which is a form of diversity that we don't talk about often. So we had a member of our leadership team share some general data about students in our school who fit the qualifications to be economically disadvantaged, and then talk about what supports do those students need, what lens should we be having as we're planning experiences for them in order to kind of have this emphasis on equity. We conducted staff professional development to better understand the backgrounds of transgender and gender non-binary students. It was an incredibly powerful workshop where we learned all about different vocabulary words. We learned about the experiences of former students at Gates and what we can do as a school to better support students as they make their way through middle school. We post our monthly diversity, equity, and inclusion digests on our Gates Google Classroom page to help us share with staff professional development opportunities around the Commonwealth related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And finally, for the second time, we're coordinating a summer reading book groups for staff who are interested in reading books relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're proud of the steps that we've taken this year. We took steps last year and the year before, and we're really happy to continue on with our work in this. This work is going to be never ending, but we are committed to it because we know that our students deserve to come to a school where they feel included, where they belong, and we are incredibly proud of creating an environment where that can happen. So those are our two goals for the year. These are highlights from that plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have related to those.
Okay. Thank you, Principal Beatty. So I'll open it up to the committee. Are there any questions?
I'd like to make a comment, Mike, just about the DEI goal. I mean, it struck me as very important that you know, when you think of DEI, you don't think of, you know, economics. And it's important to point out that that is included in DEI, that not, you know, it's not just about race or gender or what you might traditionally think of DEI, but, you know, the economics of the situation a student may be living in can cause inequality. Thank you. A lot of hard work this year.
I would just echo Ms. Lindblom's comments. I saw firsthand the efforts and the results of all the hard work done by Principal Beatty and the staff there. Nothing but high grades and commendation for everything that happened. Just wanted to say thank you for getting us through, and we look forward to a more normal year next year. But thanks for everything relative to your goals and everything else that was displayed.
Thank you.
And Ryan, I think it's interesting, Ryan, that those two goals were the result of two phenomenons. One, the pandemic, and the other, cultural shifts, and how hard it must have been for you and everyone at Gates to formulate plans to address both issues, and I think the hard work has certainly paid off, and in a pretty seamless way. And I want to congratulate you and everyone at Gates for that hard work and the results of that hard work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would add too that I think it's great that both goals kind of also tie into goals that we've heard students say that they want to see happen and come to fruition, and parents as well. So I think it's all very connected and such great work.
Yeah, right. And in terms of your first goal, I mean, we saw with the Wednesdays where kids were remote, teachers did a lot of great work in terms of having them reach out and have those that time with students to give them the extra time to ask questions or move forward with their curriculum. and then being able to continue that throughout when we were back fully in person, and just, you know, continuing to make that time for students was definitely great to see. And then in terms of your second goal, there was a great article in the Mariner last week by Ruth Thompson on a number of 8th grade students who are selling bracelets for I think it was the Trevor Project. So to your point of students becoming more engaged and really trying to make a difference in the school, I mean, that's just a great one example of the many things that are being done. So it's great to see how much they're able to do and able to come out to the administration and have those opportunities to, you know, act on things that they care about.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions for Principal Beatty, I'll turn it over to Dr. McGuire.
Thank you. So I would like to echo Principal Beatty in that this was a year we didn't want to just survive. We wanted to be able to build the support of, the flexibility with, and the investment in learning for all of our learners and our staff as well during a time that was very challenging. But we were able to overcome those challenges, learn from them, learn from one another, and really thrive in some areas this year. We have, just a reminder, similar goals as the middle school through line in the district, with our first pillar being that safe and strong. And we took that in a little bit of a different direction. We certainly had the schedule adjustments, communication around what that meant for our students and staff, but we really focused our action steps on the impact of some of the hybrid and remote learning models through the year. So with regards to implementing a remote academic mentoring program, that's one area that we felt we wanted to support students and started doing that remotely instead of in person on Wednesdays with the help of our paraprofessionals. But we were able to take that a step further and initiate the Harbor Academy program for our struggling seniors. I'm very pleased to say that 23 out of 23 students who participated graduated this spring and really turned their academic profile around from the middle of the year to the end of the year. So that's something we're looking to maintain and grow in the next school year past the pandemic. We wanted to target our freshman home bases for remote relationship building because this was a year unlike others where students were not in the building as much. They didn't have the same connection at the start of the year. So we really focused on partnering with our freshman home bases and our freshman counselor, bringing our seniors and our other leaders and students into their home bases to work through the school year with them. And we're also in the midst of revising and updating our advisory curriculum for the following school year. So that is an area that we really worked on to ensure that our freshmen were comfortable and welcomed into our building in the middle of so many changes and different learning environments. One area that we've really focused on is kind of that social emotional wellness. You're not in this alone. This is in progress. We held 2 stress laugh more weeks to kind of focus the attention and intention of finding the balance in this year. We utilized our newsletters and our advisories, and we started this concept of Sailor Strong and Stronger Together, in that you know, we are a family and that we support one another, whether that's student to staff, staff to staff member, or student to student. And again, that's in progress because that's something we feel committed to continuing through next year. We also wanted to have the space and the time and place for conversations to happen with adults about different topics. And this is an area where we also were able to be effective through optional faculty meetings for our teachers, collaboration time on Wednesday mornings, partnering during the pandemic, having conversations about some of the issues that were on the rise, marijuana, vaping, eating disorders, some of the mental health concerns from the pandemic, and just being able to talk through scenarios and conversations with our families at the high school level. We also had teacher talk, teacher-led collaboration time, which was so very helpful for our educators to be able to decompress and troubleshoot and talk about best practices and remember the love of teaching The difficulties of this year are unique, but they're not something that teachers, will have to contend with for years to come, and to remember that this is just, part of the process of getting through this year, and that we were in it together and we could succeed together. And that was very effective as well. Our second pillar is the DEI work. And again, this is something where we've just scratched the surface, and there's been work that's been done, which has been wonderful, to create entry points for our students, to create those mirrors and windows, but we have so much more to do, just getting started in this area. Our teachers committed to curriculum updates to infuse curriculum with rich, authentic connections to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is an area where it's not that we're losing the curriculum that we have or the work that's been done. This is about creating enhancements to ensure that every student has that entry point into a lesson, that we look at, whose story is being told in the classroom, and the perspectives, and to ensure that everyone is represented. We're in the process of reviewing the mission statement and core values of the high school, and the vision of the graduate that includes our DEI values. So it's wonderful that we have the acronym that everybody knows: SAIL, serve, achieve, invest, and learn. We've started having the conversations of what does that look like and what does that mean through a DEI lens, because the values don't need to change, but how we talk about them and recognize them is something that we wanted to include this DEI work. Since I've become principal, it's been very important to me to increase the trust and two-way communication surrounding incidents of hate and bias, to ensure that all members of the community feel safe to report incidents and to support our victims. We've presented here earlier in the year about the process that happens when an incident is reported. We have a new reporting form for incidents that has been utilized by students this year. We've continued that discussion through letters and newsletters and meetings, optional teacher meetings, being able to work through together and discuss those issues as they come about. We're also in the process of reviewing our handbook procedures to ensure that our commitment to making every student feel safe and welcomed in the building, and also for those students who may enact an infraction upon others in the community, to talk about really what that means and what the outcome may be for students, and so that we all go in with the same shared understanding of the expectations of how we treat others in our community and how we treat those in our family. We've had more teacher professional development to increase teacher comfort and skill in having difficult conversations. Jamil Adams, prior to joining our staff, was in a professional development workshop with the high school team again this winter, and we're part of the Harvard Rides work that's happening, the equity improvement cycle, looking at how comfortable our staff is with issues that arise, conversations that take place, how to navigate them, how to know when to initiate and engage in a conversation, and when to just mark that moment of, this is something worth having a follow-up on, but maybe this isn't the time or the place, and being able to exercise that professional development. Again, the handbook revision is in process, and the school council has been wonderful in really digging deep with that, as well as the students that joined me in Principals Advisory Council this year, really talking about what matters to them as students and what matters to them as peers. And increased communication to all stakeholders. Transparency is key, and I think that's been the success across the district, has been in sharing information, being proactive, owning mistakes, and just being, real and timely with the information we have to share to students, to staff, to families, to our school committee, and to our community at large. So we've done that in a variety of ways, and that's ongoing work, because it's important to share our successes, our areas of focus and hope for change and growth, and where we need support and help to do so. So it's been quite the year, but I feel like we have made great progress. Our teachers and students were relieved to get to this point today. But we also know that we're excited and energized about moving to the next step with our plans and with our goals, bringing rigor, you know, and the ideas of what rigor looks like, what social emotional learning looks like, and how we find the balance for our students so that they can be the best graduates poised for their next steps in life that they can be. So we'll pick up this torch through the summer and the fall and continue with the high school goals. Thank you. Any questions, happy to take them.
Great. Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
I just like to make a comment. Dr. McGuire, at our school committee meetings, I generally look forward to the student presentations, and historically, at least over the past year, I've said how great it is to hear how positive they are. I wanted to commend you both, Dr. McGuire and Principal Beatty. I think you guys brought the positive dispositions today, and I really appreciate that. I feel like obviously it was a very difficult year, but both of you came through with clear, defined goals and identified exactly how you obtain those, but also admitted that we have continued work to do, and that's much appreciated. But I really feel like both of you have positive momentum. In addition to all of our retirees, I think folks really had some kind words, and we're very happy and thankful that they had the opportunity to work in Scituate. I think that those that are working in the district now are going to say the same thing when they retire another 10 or 15, 20 years. So thank you for all the work you've done, the transparency, the positive atmosphere that you've attempted to create and been so successful with. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well said, Peter. I completely agree.
Me too. I second that.
Well, if there's no other questions for Dr. McGuire and Principal Beatty, thank you both for coming tonight and presenting those plans, both informational and you know, show how much hard work is being put into the schools and helping us move forward through this year and into next year.
Thank you, and thank you all for your hard work this year as well. It hasn't gone unnoticed. That it really takes a village, and we appreciate your support and supporting and working with you too.
Thank you. So at this time, we have the first opportunity for public comment in our meeting. If people want to raise their hand, I will try to get everyone in the order that they raise them. As you are unmuted, please just state your name and either address or school affiliation. So the first person is Kurt Gunther.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, all right. Thank you for having me. I want to, thank everyone on the school committee. I know it's a lot of work. There's probably hours you're working we don't know about. I volunteer with the Boy Scouts Little League Scituate Parade Committee for 6 years, and I've been in this town for 18 years. And I have 3 kids in the system, and I live on Tickner Place. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to get this image off, but I'll just keep going.
Nope, that's fine.
I want to say, I want to put a vote in for ending these Zoom meetings. I mean, I went to 2 Bruins playoff games. There was 19,000 people in there. Celtics playoff games. I think the virus is pretty much over, especially with our vaccination rate. I know these Zooms are convenient, but it'd be great to get face-to-face Q&A after and see kind of the people behind the kids that are in the school system. So I hope others would support that. In addition, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, can I address that first before you continue? So we've been working with Scituate TV and with our technology department just to have a strong way that we can have people in person as well as allowing people to call in remotely.
All right.
It wasn't fully ready yet, so we are continuing to work towards that to, at some point, ideally be back in person. So just so you know that it's something that we are working on behind the scenes.
All right, that's great. Also, I want to say that I've been on before and maybe I was a little abrupt and forceful. I apologize for that. I think I'm a big believer in full disclosure on everything. I believe parents, guardians, and the constituents of the town, which are the parents and guardians who have kids in school, I think they should know everything that's going on. And I can tell you by being out there, and I'm in a couple parent groups, which is SENA and Parents Perspective on Facebook. A lot of people feel, and I'm just communicating to you, they don't know everything you're doing, and they don't know everything the school administration's doing. And I think that's what's causing a lot of divide in town, because we had a big meeting this past weekend and a lot of parents showed up and more are showing up, and they're kind of disgusted because just what you guys just did for the past 45, 50 minutes, that no one mentions the word achieve better educational results. You talk about these rooms and these groups, but no one ever mentions the word education. It's actually startling. I was taking notes. I'm like, it's great that you want to include everyone and make everyone feel very comfy, and that's great. But it's almost like, when can we move forward with, let's start educating? So back to being full disclosure, as the school ended today, there were probably 100 families at the beaches at Peggotty. And just to tell you, they're all talking about the same thing. They're all finding out about this push for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it's very one-sided in the sense that it's pushing kind of the white supremacy and all people are bad in Scituate because we don't include others. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Am I bad for listening and them saying that to me and agreeing? Or am I just resisting the fact that we're not inclusive? And I don't know where it falls in the middle. I don't. But I can tell you that a lot of people today at the beach were like, what in the hell is going on over there? And why aren't we finding out? And you have said in other meetings, hey man, you can join these Zoom meetings and find out, go ahead. And that is true. But as we went fully remote, a lot of people didn't do that, and maybe it's on them. But I'm just out here to tell you that, as parents, and I'm in different groups, people are starting to get kind of noticing what's going on. And it's to my point where, and I'll finish up, is I know we're looking at a pilot program for the civics course based on the primary source and lessons for justice folks. And I know I looked at the magazine Teaching Tolerance, and it's like, it really beats people up as one group's oppressors and the other groups are oppressed. And I think this is where people are getting upset. Now, maybe they don't understand everything and I don't, but that's what's causing a divide in town, as I noticed as I walked around talking to different families. I implore parents to two things: get more involved and come to the SENA and the Parents Perspective meetings. And also, if there's nothing to hide with these changes in curriculum, why doesn't the school and the school committee, why don't you put them out there on a public page so people can see it and discuss it? Because I know, and I'll wrap up, I know that the civics course, you're not going to even have the information until sometime in mid-August, I believe. Superintendent Burkhead said, how the heck can anybody talk about it if they disagree with it? Maybe they don't want all that pushed on our kids. And one last thing, these are our kids. They're on lend to you. That's it. They're not, I don't think the school committee and the school administration should think they can tell our kids everything they want to tell them without parents and guardians knowing. And I thank you for my time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gunther. I think I'll address a couple of the points that you made just so that you're aware. So I know on our website, we do have the curriculum maps out there for at least grades K through 8. which are available for people to go in and peruse. And one of the things that Superintendent Burkhead and I have talked about over the past couple of weeks is, really trying to put curriculum back out into our meetings. I mean, the last, 15 months now has been about COVID, getting kids back into school safely, and then also being able to, get through this school year. So now that we're at that point, I mean, to the point that you made, we are going to continue to, make that information available for the public. And maybe, we need to send out a blast email saying this is where all the information is at the beginning of the school year. But at the same time, if parents do have concerns, I mean, if you talk to them, definitely tell them, feel free to reach out to me, other members of the school committee, or the superintendent. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions that they have. And you're right, I mean, we're a public body. We represent the public. I mean, we want to be as transparent as we can. And if there are concerns by families, we should try to address them. So thank you for your comments. Next is Mr. Taft.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Long. I'd like to echo what Mr. Gunther said.
Mike, can they identify themselves, please?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Mr. Taft, can you just state your address or?
Oh, sorry, thank you.
affiliation?
I'm sorry, Richard Taft. I have a student at Scituate High School. I'm at 74 Brook Street. And I'd like to echo what was said earlier. You guys really should. I'm glad that you're looking at it. There's no reason why you shouldn't be in person and should be using the technology to do both. My goodness, we have 6- and 7-year-olds going to school every day, or did go to school every day, and there's no reason why we can't be there. The other thing I would say is having high ideals is only a failure if you don't recognize when you don't reach them. Not having goals for academic excellence at either Gates or the high school, having it specific is a failure. Not recognizing over the year that we lost 40 or 50 days at the end of the 2019-2020 school year. When you did your teacher reviews in April, no one asked that question. How can you find out if you did what you didn't achieve if you don't ask? And all the nationally normed tests that were discussed there, we were falling behind previous years. Again, it's not a sin to ask tough questions of people that are responsible for doing this. They're good, strong people. They'll want you to ask tough questions. Look, the implementation of the DEI policy has had some real concerns and failures. I think the actions that you took with Gates was a mistake, and I think a lot of parents think the same way. I think the actions that were handled earlier in the year in high school were poorly handled, and they did more to exacerbate a problem than to solve them. And the last thing I'd say is these ideas that you're bringing in, frankly, you're redefining a whole bunch of words that no one even knew they needed to be redefined, and one of them is transparency. Just because we ask you for information about exactly what the professional development is doesn't mean you have the right to figure out a way to give us the absolute least you possibly can. And that's what you've done. The same thing with words like love and inclusion. It is not love or trust to blast out an email to the 3,000 people in our community so that you can shame and embarrass some 12-year-olds. So think about the words you're using, thinking about how you're defining them, thinking about how your actions are actually informing those words. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer O'Neill.
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to clarify the record from a previous speaker. The parent's perspective is actually...
Sorry, Jen, can you just state your address?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeannie. Jennifer O'Neill, Gannett Road, Scituate. I have 3 graduates from Scituate Public Schools. I just wanted to clarify that Parents' Perspective is actually a Facebook page that was created about 4 years ago to allow parents to come together just to exchange ideas and ask questions about different things happening in the Scituate Public Schools. It became very active during COVID about reopening, and now it's being used a lot for what time does the bus pick up this afternoon at the the early release day. So that's what it's used for. We don't have any public meetings. It's just a Facebook page. So I just wanted to clarify that from one of the previous speakers. And that's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next is Kate Sardink.
Thank you so much. My name is Kate Fardink. I live on Pinebrook Lane. I have 2 students at Cushing Elementary School. And I can say I'm actually very involved in school-sponsored and district-sponsored groups. And I just wanted to take a second to, instead of focusing on all the things that so many feel like went wrong this year, say bravo to the administration and our school committee that got us through this year. I know there are people saying that there were initiatives and things that did harm, but in fact, I know that there are many students who felt more welcome at school this year. And we can talk about academic excellence all day long, but if someone doesn't feel comfortable being in that building, they're never going to get to academic excellence. So for everything that you all have done, with all the extra and the criticism and the chatter that came your way, there are students whose lives you probably saved this year. There are parents who back you up and believe in you. So we can say so many families and everyone feels this way and everyone feels that way. We're never going to agree on that. And the divisiveness is in saying that everybody should feel this way. No one has to agree. That's the point. And the diversity is celebrating our differences instead of saying one group is right and one group is wrong. And I think if we could keep moving that way, then we're on the right track. So thank you all so much for what we thought could have been a disastrous year as a parent, that we all made it, we all survived, and we're looking forward to something a little more normal next year under this new guidance. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think one of the points that Dr. Mcgran made in her presentation is important, where, you know, there were those conversations with bringing adults into the conversation and, you know, having ways for students to reach out when they feel insecure. Just continuing to do that and expand on that throughout the next year will get that involvement out there and make sure that, you know, families and students are aware of both what's going on in the district and, you know, how they can reach out if they need to. But thank you for your comment.
And Mike, if I could add something too, just on that topic. I think that the fact that every sort of school and teacher, everybody has the same goals, everybody's sort of rowing in the same direction, that when Mr. Burkhead first had brought the idea of everybody having common goals like that, I thought that was just such a genius approach to making real change and seeing progress and working towards goals of families and students and administrators and school committee. So I just want to say again that I'm really, really proud of the work that the administrators, staff, faculty, principals, students, and families have done this whole school year. So thank you. Thanks again.
Okay, so seeing no other comments, there is one more opportunity for comments from the public later in the meeting. But next on the agenda under new business is...
May I interrupt you, Mike? I'm sorry. Sure. I had something going on at home where I had to turn off the picture and the volume. I'd just like to talk to, or comment to Lisa about their school improvement plan at the high school. And Lisa, like with Ryan, the work that you guys have done this year has been phenomenal. And again, at the hardest of circumstances, both with issues that have occurred, whether they're social issues or pandemic issues, again, nobody's perfect, but I think we have done a phenomenal job, whether it's at the high school or at the Gates Middle School or in the elementary schools. One of the things I did want to just specifically talk about, which is something we've been talking about for a little while, but it's the Harper Academy for seniors at risk. And despite what anybody thinks or says, there is no higher goal in the Citroen Public Schools than student excellence. And to get kids through, and people who say there is no goal of student excellence are just not paying attention or not willing to admit to the truth. But I say that in conjunction, especially with the Harper Academy. I put 4 children and 1 grandchild through the Scituate Public Schools, and with 4 more still in there. Out of the children and grandchild who has gone through all the way through to the high school. 2 out of those 5 breezed to school. They didn't need anybody's help. They needed whatever help they could get from their family and outside of school. But the other 3 at various times, whether it was early in middle school or elementary school, but 2 specifically had things going on in their lives that deeply affected them their senior year in high school, which I think can be a very common years for some real serious problems. And what impressed me about not only the Harper Academy, but you said that was not a change in the goals or the feeling of duty to these kids that the high school has, whether it's the administration or the teachers. But 2 of my children needed help to graduate, and they got it. And I know if this wasn't, years ago, it would have been probably through the Harper Academy to get them through their senior year. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm especially impressed with the Harper Academy because we had discussed and known for a while that there were a bunch of kids who were in jeopardy of graduating this year. And the Harper Academy brought these kids over the finish line. And it wasn't like, all right, well, we're going to set up a Harper Academy and anybody that joins is going to get a diploma, whether they come or not or whatever. Those kids, through the guidance and assistance of the administration and the faculty at Scituate High School, did the work that they needed to do to excel and graduate from Scituate High School. And I just want to thank you for that and for for your expertise and your deep love for these kids that we teach to get them through. And it's not just a drag kid, give kids a diploma or get them to the next grade. Every principal and teacher in the Scituate Public Schools does whatever they can and whatever they can think of to make each kid excel to the best of their abilities and have a successful academic career in Scituate. And I mean, people don't understand that they either aren't paying attention or don't want to pay attention and just say whatever they want to say. So I want to thank you, especially for that Harper Academy.
Thanks, Mike. So since the comments kept going, we did get one more hand raised. Stuart Withrow. Sorry, that's my fault. I must get unmute again.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Stuart Withrow, 62 Ann Vinyl Road. I've had 2 children through the Scituate school system, and I have one currently at Hatherley. Just wanted to kind of reiterate what the first gentleman spoke about. I've never spoken at any of these meetings ever, but recently it's become more apparent that I have to back up what other people have said, that I totally understand. Everybody is doing a phenomenal job through very trying times during COVID. But it seems like a lot of the things I hear is the curriculum, or a lot of the focus is less on what we expect the schools to be teaching and more about whatever the agenda I think other people want the schools to be teaching. And I expect math, and I expect English, science, I expect certain things. I think we're getting very deep into social issues that are being directed more from your end than from the parents and the people that are raising their children. And it just, I totally understand where you guys want everybody to feel safe, and diversity is always equal among everybody. But I feel like we're getting really bogged down and losing the focus of what these, what's supposed to be the most forefront things. And the word that always comes to mind to me right now in the last couple of months when I've been getting word of this is gaslighting. And I feel like there's a lot of gaslighting going on where people are starting to feel like we are the problem, that you're making us feel like we're the problem, that we've done something wrong, basically by living and being a citizen in Scituate, Massachusetts, or at least I think people are starting to feel that way. And if you don't know what gaslighting is, we're feeling like there's a lot of emphasis on the social part of whether we can or can't control in this country, and making it feel like we're responsible for something that we're not responsible for, or we maybe weren't paying attention to a lot of things that are being taught. But I can tell you, I think a lot of people's eyes are being woken up here about some things that are coming into the curriculum, and I'm certainly going to be much more focused on it, because that is really, a lot of this stuff is not for the school system to be teaching. Quite honestly, it really is not. I think you guys are starting to really push the limits of what your I guess social etiquette issues of what you think is right and wrong. And we, as far as parents, or at least speaking for myself, it just doesn't feel like the focus is where it's supposed to be. It feels like we're trying to, we're trying to rewrite a lot of things that a lot of it hasn't even been based. A lot of it, we don't even know if it's factual or it's just interpretations. And I guess as we go forward here, I guess we'll all try to be much more aware of what is going on behind the scenes here. And if it is transparent and we can see this, great, because I want to see it as well. And I hope we can have an open dialogue on this, because we see this in a macro across the country, and we see it now micro here in our own hometown. And it just seems to be where the emphasis, and again, I apologize because this is my first time speaking here, so I haven't been on all these meetings to hear. I'm just kind of getting the flavor of all this in the last month or so, and it's just becoming, like somebody said today, talking to parents, red flags are popping up here that people are starting to get very concerned about the direction of where this is all going. And it's not, it's not comfortable. I mean, we need to talk about this, but I think you're making people feel like we're somehow in the wrong here, and we just don't understand where this is coming from. But we hope that we can have a dialogue to get through this, because it certainly seems like there's something more going on here. COVID was one thing, and maybe COVID allowed us to kind of get this more, hearing what's being taught, paying more attention, being more involved in these actual education, when the kids were home. Maybe that was a good opening for us to get more aware of this. I guess that's the word I come to, is there's a much more awareness now. And I hope that this can, when we're in person, because I think it'll be much better in person as well, that we can start having a dialogue here of hopefully keeping this not, I don't know what the proper word is, but the word that I keep thinking is, it feels like a bit of gaslighting. And I could be completely wrong, but it has that vibe to it. That's all I can say, and thank you for the time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Rither.
Mike,
Yeah,
Ms. Long. Can I make a comment?
Let me go first.
Okay.
I'm pulling chair rights.
Fine by me.
Ms. Rither, I remember being in a school committee meeting a couple of years ago, and we'd have 10 people in the 10 people in the audience, and 9 out of those 10 were presenting. So I agree with you. I mean, the more we can have people involved and have that discussion, I think is great, not only for us as a school committee, but us as a community. A lot of what we teach is based on the DESE guidelines that come down from the state. So someone had mentioned civics curriculum that's coming from the state, and something that we need to incorporate into our education. And sharing that information more broadly to the community is something we can definitely, as I said earlier, we can definitely look at continuing to do, and just keeping people aware and having that open dialogue. But I mean, I agree with you. As we continue to have these meetings, I mean, we had 400 people a year ago at this point, and most of that was COVID related, but we're still ranging around 60 people, which is great to see. And just having that back and forth, either through our meetings or I know they meet every other week. So either through email or constant communication is, definitely something we, at least I, as a committee member, want to make sure we continue to have. Ms. Bernally?
Oh yeah, I'll also say I agree. I'm a big fan of in-person meetings. So the second we have our technical stuff figured out, and as long as it's, the most accessible building for Mike that is most comfortable and everybody's comfortable in person, I know we all are. So yeah, absolutely want to do the in-person stuff. Just wanted to speak to some of the curriculum stuff. So I guess one of my feelings about this as a school committee member is, I happen to work in education, my colleagues don't, but we all have kids in the school system and grandchildren, and, we all really want the same things. I guess I'm confused. I personally haven't received any emails from anybody questioning or specifying a curriculum issue, with the exception of some back and forth emails in the past about certain books and, age appropriate level and developmental appropriateness of those books. But other than that, I'm not sure what the curriculum changes are that are being referred to. And, we come to the meetings, but we're, running these meetings, but we're not in the buildings. We're not sort of boots on the ground day to day. So, there's obviously that natural chain of command a person, a parent or a caregiver would follow. If you have questions about what kids are learning, you go directly to your teacher. And then if you need further assistance, you can go to people like department heads and principals and admin. But I just wanted the community to know that I haven't received any emails personally questioning a particular curriculum on any subject matter. And I don't know if any of the rest of you have received those kinds of communications, but I don't want to, I feel like we have frustration in the community by some people, but we also, I'm not sure what specifically people have a question about, if it is the civics curriculum or something of that nature. But please email us with whatever it is that isn't something that people are comfortable with, that, we don't know until we get the information how to help solve any of these issues.
And before I let you speak, Mr. Hayes, the one other thing that I'll just add quickly is, the week before our meetings, I meet with Superintendent Burkhead and we go over the agenda. And part of what drives the agenda topics is the items that we're hearing from the community. It might take a little bit longer as we get the information together to present something that's thoughtful and well-rounded, but that is a constant part of the communication that Superintendent Burkhead and I, the chair in general, has with the superintendent, to make sure that if there is something out in the community, that we do something to get on the agenda and make sure people are aware, so that they can either attend our meeting and see it there, or watch the meeting later. And any documents we share, any school committee document is public record anyways. We can share that with the community to make sure that it's out there, either on a school website or provided if requested. Mike, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, and I'm only going to just say this once, Mike, because I know this really isn't a section of the school committee meeting for public debate, but it's difficult to sit here and listen to a lot of this stuff. I agree 100% with what Nicole just said. I have never received any inquiry from any parent ever regarding school curriculum. And if you want to have a discussion about school curriculum, fine, ask questions about school curriculum. And I always answer my emails. Secondly, to be accused of being part of the school system that teaches critical race theory and that people in Scituate are either oppressed or oppressors is wrong. It's nonsense. And to say that the school committee is gaslighting the parents of Scituate is completely absurd. I know what gaslighting means. I've known since the movie Gaslight came out in the 40s, and started watching movies, what the meaning of gaslighting is. And gaslighting is perpetuating a lie to people to try and convince them of a certain lie, or a certain political view. So to compare the Scituate Public Schools to an organization that is perpetuating a lie and trying to convince people of that lie is wrong. It's intellectually dishonest, and it's not true. The thing that maybe we could have this type of discussion, but it's interesting how these quote unquote parent groups, they won't invite school committee members to take part and have these discussions. They have these discussions over cocktails or at the beach or wherever they may have them. They don't deal with many facts. And that's my opinion. I'm gonna, as I said, I know this isn't the time or place, but I can't just sit here and listen to some of this stuff without responding. And I'm gonna say what I just said once. And if anybody wants to talk to me, they have my email address and my phone number. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody, any of these issues, but I'm not gonna just sit here and listen to it. And that's all I'm gonna say.
All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end the public comment for right now, give it 20 minutes because we do have a second opportunity for public comment. I wrote down the 4 people that have their hands raised now. Excuse me, I'll start with them if they want to speak during the second public comment, but I am going to move forward in the agenda. So the first item under the new business was the clarification of school committee, our anti-racism resolution statement language with Ms. Brandley.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Yes, so we were asked during a public comment a few different times to look into some of the wording of our anti-racist statement that was published last October. And so, you know, just as an effort to continue to listen and be transparent with families, I did some additional work and wanted to talk with you all about it. So this is, you know, obviously it's a school committee document. It's on our website. And it's just a statement of commitment. So, you know, when I went back and looked at it and sort of revisited the charge of creating the document and sort of the history of it all, the Mass Association of School Committees had communicated, you know, their thoughts and opinions on the current state of the universe at the time. And one of the things that they kind of came up with some language, and it's effective, and we adopted it in part of that document. So part of their language says, as school leaders, we look at policies, practices, and procedures that often unintentionally produce inequitable outcomes for children at risk, and adopt strong anti-racism policy statements locally to show our commitment to identify, challenge, and change values, structures, and behaviors that can create systemic racism. So that came from Mass Association of School Committees. They went on to say, we call upon our colleagues and constituents at every level of government and in every school district to use their positions as leaders, educators, and mentors to the current and future generations to speak out and use their classroom, schools, and their voices as instruments for securing social and economic justice for students, their families, and their communities, and their nation. We must move with purpose to ensure that we, as a people, act deliberately to demonstrate to all Americans that prejudice and hate will not be tolerated and will be challenged at every turn. So that was sort of like the broad mask document version of that. And we kind of looked specifically within our own school system. So when we say, you know, systemic racism, we're looking through a lens that keeps in mind that we're part of a larger educational institution through federal and state policies, decades of things like zero tolerance policies for discipline and bullying, and moving to more restorative justice-based models, looking at practices like hiring more racially and ethically diverse staff, adding programs, you know, much of what was talked about today by our principals, just looking through that lens of inclusion and love and equity in every aspect of the curriculum. So our statement was a commitment to families and students to work to bring people together and to support and honor differences, teach truth and history, provide opportunities for bravery, brave spaces, for growth, support for supportive tools and, tools that support staff and faculty and students to achieve those goals together. So it really is kind of the direction we ended up rowing in terms of our own goals. So, you know, I don't know what you all think, or if there's any I guess we were going to look into whether that was the proper language, or if we wanted to make any changes to that document. Are we comfortable with it, or?
Yep, and just to
Or
be
not.
clear, so two things. This came out of a comment that was made in our last school committee meeting. So we did, you know, go back and take a look at this. And this is not, the statement that was put out is not policy. It's not a procedure that we follow. It doesn't drive the curriculum. It's just a statement that was put out by the school committee and is non-binding in any way. But I just want to clarify that, but I'll open it up to any other members of the committee if they have any additional comments on this.
Yeah, I'd like to comment because I think, you know, one of the complaints about that statement was that, you know, we're calling Scituate Public Schools systemically racist. And I don't think, I think what when we say that, it's, you know, it's, what we're looking at is materials, you know, as one example, materials that may be used to teach a particular lesson in a classroom that may have historically only been representative of one culture. And what we're trying to, what I think is important is that part of that change is making sure that materials that we use represent the students that we are teaching. And it's important for students to see themselves in lessons that they are being taught. And it's by no fault of anybody, any of the teachers or the, you know, principals or, you know, curriculum leaders, that the material is, you know, can be called systemically racist. It's just what we've been using, and we need to look at that, and we need to change because society is changing. And we'd like to change with it. We can't remain stagnant using materials that don't look like the world. And one of which, you know, is one of, I think Ms. Rundle will agree that one of the comments graduating seniors have made is when they come back, or, you know, they ask how about their experience in Scituate Public Schools, is they don't feel like they were prepared when they went to college or went out in the world. They just, you know, weren't prepared for the world that they were seeing. So that's my comment.
Mike, I want to agree 100% with what Janet's just said, and especially that last part, because I know that from my children who have left Scituate and gone out into the world, and in that regard, that statement is 100% correct. Scituate is a insulated, very beautiful, lovely town, but it is not representative of the world that we live in. And one of our goals has always been is to teach and students to succeed in the real world. And what we've been working on is part of that. It's not all of it, but it is part of it.
And can I add to that, you know, part of, I think what people are afraid, you know, some of the comments, people think that we're going to make the kids feel bad about themselves because of the color of their skin, meaning, you know, the white kids. That's not what this is about. They need to, you know, part of understanding society is understanding that, you know, some people have advantages just by virtue of who they are. And it's not bad to recognize that and to teach kids about what other, you know, what you're, you know, when they go off to college, what their classmate in their, you know, college freshman English class may have been up against in order to reach that same place. Not everybody is given the same, you know, we don't all start off at the same starting spot. And I think it's important for children to know that.
Are there any other comments from the committee? Okay. And I just want to echo a little bit of what Ms. Lindblom just said. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, every kid comes from a different background. You know, they're going to go to a different area of the country for school or for college or for the career or where they move or whatever. One of the interesting things at graduation every year is looking at the caps of the students and seeing where they're going. And this year, I think I counted Virginia, Texas, Florida, California. A couple of years ago, I think it was like 6 years ago now, I remember we had our students going to 42 different states, which was an amazing thing to see because they were just going out into the world. And I mean, to Ms. Lindblom's point, it's not, I mean, yeah, you come from Massachusetts, someone else might come from a different community, and really it's where it fits in the curriculum and the guidelines that we follow. It's just making sure that we provide a well-rounded education for our students so that they, you know, understand that, you know, Massachusetts is different than Florida, who's different than Oklahoma, in any other state or any other country in the world. And I mean, it should never be about shaming a kid. I mean, none of our kids were part of, were alive in the 40s or in World War II and what happened in Europe. I'm pretty sure none of our kids were alive in the 1800s when we had slavery in the country. And at the end of the day, this is what happened. This was the impact on any person that was part of it, whether you lived in the North, the South, whether you're African as a slave or African as a, you know, someone who was free. And it's just, you know, where it fits to talk about the full history and making sure that our students are aware so that, as Mr. Hayes said, they can go out into the world, and wherever they go, they have that ability to succeed and excel where they go. So looking at the,
Mike, I would just add, I know Ms. Brandolini, I think was probably the main contributor to the anti-racism resolution that we made. But there's a lot of effort put in. As she had mentioned, Mass came out with a standard anti-racism resolution, and we took the time to really make it Scituate specific. And as much as folks want to say that, you know, we're doing things behind the scenes or we're not being transparent, I like to say actually opposite, that we've been more transparent than any administration or other, at least in the last 4 years that I've been here. And to say that parents are concerned with the curriculum, I would actually say the opposite. I received more positive emails when we adopted this resolution than any negative emails I received over that same period. So I'm fully in support of our current anti-racism resolution as it reads. I think I have more heartwarming emails to say thank you. Not all kids are typical. Not all things are relative to just those star performers. There's lots of different types of people in our community in the world. We need to make sure that every single one of them feels comfortable in our schools.
Okay. So now this was just a discussion item on the agenda. There's no vote expected to be taken on this. It sounds like there's no request from the committee to change the wording. So
I have
no
none.
other. Okay. So if there's no other comments, I'll move forward to the next item on the agenda. Okay. Seeing none. So the next item on the agenda is the superintendent contract amendment. So Mr. Gates had started this when he was chair. We had looked at Superintendent Burkhead's contract related specifically to vacation days for this year. So there's an amendment proposed that we reviewed in executive session strictly for this year regarding the vacation days that Superintendent Burkhead had. So if we vote on this, I'll open it up to the committee to just see if there are any questions or comments that anybody had. So if there are none, then I will look for a motion related to this item.
I don't have it in front of me. Could someone read it, please?
Mike, there's no motion on the blue packet.
Well, I would move to approve the amendment to Superintendent Burkhead's contract for the school year 7/1/20 to 6/30/21.
Second.
Roll call vote. Long, yes. Hayes?
Hayes, yes.
Gates?
Yes.
Brindley?
Yes. Sorry, yes.
And Lindblom?
Yes.
Thank you all. So now I'll move forward to old business in the agenda. Ms. Tammy Rundle will present regarding an amendment to the 2021-22 program of studies.
Thank you for having me tonight. I just wanted to put in a proposal to amend the program of studies. What we'd like to do is add a honors level option for 4 of our science, technology, engineering courses. That would be an honors level option in engineering 1, engineering 2, and robotics 1 and robotics 2. I do have Patrick Newton, our science chair, on the call tonight to answer any specific questions about that. But we have, in the spring, we offered a couple of students the opportunity to take it as an honors class for credit, and we found it to be very successful. And we would like to move forward and make that put that forward as a change in the program of studies. A lot of our, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, finish up.
I was just going to say, we are moving towards more and more of our elective courses be offered at the honors level classes. Honors level, we have honors level courses in business and art and music and family and consumer sciences. So it would just be a nice transition to add for the engineering classes as well.
Are there any questions on this change from the rest of the committee?
You ready for a motion, Mike?
I think so, yeah, there are no questions.
Okay, in the spirit of academic and student excellence, I would move that the school committee approve the change in course selections as presented.
I second.
Thank you. So we'll do a roll call vote. Brindley?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
Long, yes. Hayes?
Yes.
And Gates? You there?
Yes.
Okay.
Gosh.
All right. Thank you for presenting that, Ms. Rundle.
Great, thank you.
I'm sure we'll see you back in a couple months to go over the program studies again. Okay, so moving on the agenda, we have 4 different policies that we were going to review as a second reading. So I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Arnold.
Good evening again. This should be quick. We have 4 policies, like you said, Chairman Gates, that need to be read for the second time and hopefully go to a vote. We have 1 change on policy JFABE, which is educational opportunities for military children. And it is, the policy subcommittee met last week. Ms. Lindblom and Chairman Long and I met to talk about this one little phrase that we had to add to that policy. And it's under definitions, children of military families, and it reads, school-aged children enrolled in kindergarten through 12th grade in the household of an active duty member and for a period of 1 year after retirement of the uniformed service of the United States, including members of the National Guard and Reserve serving on active duty. So we added that phrase, and for a period of 1 year after retirement. And this was feedback that I received from DESE after I filed our homeless TFM with them. I completed the homeless TFM, tiered focused monitoring survey, or report rather, that I had to complete with them. And this was the one thing that they said we needed to add. And the other policies are good.
So we'll open up to the committee. First, I'll start with the policy that Ms. Arnold just mentioned, so JFABE. Are there any questions or concerns about the change that was being made? Okay, so before we get into the other policies that are on the agenda, is there a motion to approve this policy?
I'll make a motion to approve policy JFABE as presented.
Second.
I'll do a roll call vote. Hayes?
Hayes, yes.
Gates?
Yes.
Brandolini?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
And Long, yes. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Arnold. There's one. So we do have a second reading as well for policies JFAA, JFABD, and JFABF. So typically, I know typically we only go through the policies and do a second reading before making a vote, but we can always go a third if we need to. As we're in our backups, I'll open it up to the committee to see if there were any questions on any of these additional policies.
I have no questions, Mike.
No questions here.
Looks fine to me.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. So I'll take them in order as they appear on the agenda. So is there a motion for policy JFAA?
Move as presented.
A second.
Roll call vote. So Hayes?
Hayes, yes.
Gates?
Yes.
Brandolini?
Yes.
Lindblom?
Yes.
And Long, yes. And then so the next one was JFABD.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I'll do a roll call vote again. Long, yes. Lindblom?
Yes.
Brandolini?
Yes.
Gates?
Yes.
Hayes? It's recorded in the video. We got a positive consent from Mr. Hayes.
Hayes, yes.
And then the last policy is JFABF.
I make a motion to approve JFABF as presented.
Yep, you got it right.
Second.
Okay. Long, yes. Lindblom?
Yes.
Brandolini?
Yes.
Gates? Sorry,
Yes.
I'm doing two things at once.
Yes.
And Mr. Hayes? Mike? Okay. It passed 4-0, so it's still unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Arnold. I'm sure one of the joys of going towards retirement is getting to do policy. So you get to leave knowing these four got approved.
Thank you.
All right. So at this point in the agenda, we have the second and final opportunity for public comment. I know things started going a little off the rails as we were ending the last public comment, and I did write down the 6 or so people that had their hands raised. I'll just reference our policy BEDH. It's just, we can have civil comments back and forth and just trying to keep it, it can be as constructive as people want it to be, and we'll take as much feedback as possible, but just, keeping it civil and not anything else. So the first person I had from the last time who still has their hand raised, Michelle Ramaphosa.
Yes. Hello?
Hi.
Okay, just want to make sure you can hear me. This is Michelle Ramapocha. I'm from 121 Sedgwick Drive. I have 3 children in Citrus Public Schools, one at Gates, one at Jenkins, and the other at Hatherley. I'm just wanting to respond to some of what was said earlier and just echo Mike Hayes' comments and Nicole Brandolini's comments. There is most definitely a focus in our schools on academic excellence, and also at the school committee meetings. That's, you know, pretty much all that's discussed, other than the diversity, equity, inclusion, which has caused such an uproar that is dominating more time. And if there is, you know, over focus on this issue, it is because of, you know, some of the disagreement with how it's being carried out. And I just want to note that if, you know, if I don't attend all the meetings, the school committee meetings, and then I'm not informed of what's going on in the DEI workings, then I suppose that to be my own fault. I don't learn about what's happening at the school committee at the beach, discussing with people who are also not attending today at the school meeting, the school committee meeting, and then make up my mind that there's all these goings on that are very secretive, and that the school committee is being, you know, cronyist and, you know, hiding all these things. The school committee does not set the curriculum. And so, you know, I think that there's a lot of education that has to go on. I wrote a letter this morning to Jamil, just stating how I feel like, you know, there is a lot of misperception, misunderstanding. It's a lot of it is to, you know, the fault of propaganda that is freely spread throughout the country. It's caused a lot of division. People are not taking the time and effort to inform themselves. And then, you know, we have Facebook pages like Scituate Parents, not All Parents Perspectives. I actually started All Parents Perspectives because Scituate Parents Perspectives Facebook page blocks and kicks off people who raise any questions or disagrees with anybody who questions, you know, diversity and inclusion and stuff like that. So I just wanted to mention that because you were invited to attend to that. You were invited to attend that, and I want you to know that many people have been kicked off that page and blocked. So aside from that, it's important that you know that, because if you're going to be, you know, speaking on a forum, know that people are being excluded from that. So I just want to make sure that you understand that there is a very serious need for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools. If you don't know it, maybe you haven't walked the halls, maybe you haven't listened to conversations between high school kids and middle schoolers. There is constant bullying. There is constant racism. It is widespread. So maybe visit your kid's school and walk through the halls, and maybe you'll hear it sometime. And then you'll understand how necessary, how needed it is. And you should be very grateful that you have Jamil willing to work here, because he's going to make things better. So just be happy, move on with your life, attend school meetings regularly. Don't just come in and drop bombs. Okay, bye.
Sure. All right, Ms. Posham, a lot of the end of that was a little disrespectful. I couldn't find the mute button to mute you because your box was muted. But yeah, like I said before we started this public comment section, we need to keep it as civil and constructive as possible. So the next person I had was Mr. Taft.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Look, it may be uncomfortable, but yes, Mr. Hayes, you do have to sit there and listen to us. The statements of your anti-racist statement is inflammatory, and it is gaslighting. It says the systemic racism that currently exists in Scituate public schools. It doesn't say some materials that we sometimes read to kids isn't appropriate, or it doesn't fully integrate what our history of our country does. It says the school is systemically racist. The words are the words, and if you don't believe them, then you should change them. The books that you continue to use as references for diversity, equity, and inclusion just purport one point of view, and that is the anti-racist critical race theory point of view. Robin DiAngelo, Ibram Kendi, they are unapologetic critical race theory advocates. They believe that you can only be a racist if you're white. So look, I'm all for balance, but you could take it one step. I raised this 9 months ago. You could take one step. You could have added a few books in there from a different political perspective that described racism and race in America, but you didn't. You chose to embrace these ideas. And today, you just choose to get defensive about it instead of listening to people who for the first time are calling in here in what is an intimidating forum. Being in person is much less intimidating. And you chose to just say, no, that guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. And so look, you're our public representatives. Your job is to try to glean some different points of view from the people who elected you. And yes, some of them didn't vote for you, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taft. Let's see, Stuart, Ms. Hanley.
Hi, I did not intend to speak here tonight, and I am frankly sad that I have to do this, but you know, I came on to address Mike Hayes' comment, but I first now need to address what Ms. Ramaphosa said.
So Ms. Hanley, I don't want to get into a back and forth. I mean, if you have a comment to the school committee, you can do so.
Okay, I am saying it to you, Mr. Long, and it has to go on the public record. I'll make it very brief in response to that comment, and then I'll say perhaps a little more to Mr. Hayes, or about Mr. Hayes' comment to you, Mr. Long. The eligibility requirements for belonging to a parent's perspective is that you are...
I'm not, Ms. Hanley, I'm going to stop you. This isn't about Facebook pages, and I mean, the school committee doesn't have a Facebook page, and we don't go and monitor Facebook on a regular basis. I mean, I'll let you take that up separately and just focus on your response to Mr. Hayes if you'd like to make one.
Well, I would like to make one, but I would also like the record to note that Ms. Ramaphosa was able to make her statement. So to Mr.
I tried to stop her. We'll make sure the minutes reflect correctly.
Mr. Hayes, you commented that nobody had ever in your time sent you a concern about curriculum. That is absolutely untrue. I can read those emails into the record. We wouldn't have time. There are other parents too who also sent them to you. So that is false. It might even be considered gaslighting, because this constant dismissal of parents and that smug attitude is the reason that people have set up certain forums for parents to discuss parents' perspective. And I have to address it just in this context, Mike. I'm not going to address the previous speaker because I will adhere to the rules here. What you referred to as those parent groups, Mike, first of all, it was already explained that parents' perspective are not meeting at the beach or over cocktails, as you insinuate. It is a forum set up to be a safe place for parents to have discussions about matters related to their students. It is for those who are parents of current SPS students. No, you haven't been invited, because it is open to everyone who meets that requirement and who is able to engage in respectful discussion. For those members of the school committee who do currently have students at SPS, they are more than welcome to engage on any topic. Parents are the primary caregivers for the children. They are key stakeholders in this district, both in terms of being the parents of the children and being the taxpayers. The reason I personally was a co-founder of that group was because I personally experienced, along with many other parents, that when we raised concerns, they were ignored or denied, or there was a public effort to discredit the speakers. That is not okay. That is not partnering. Parents want to partner with the school district. Parents appreciate greatly many of the phenomenal staff that we have here and much of the work that is done. And Mr. Hayes, I would ask you to go back and revisit your emails, and then I would like to ask you to come back and address your statement again and correct the record. Thank you.
And I will just say publicly that if there are any questions or concerns that parents have, I know I said this to, I think it was Mr. Gunther earlier, that people are hearing, they should definitely be reaching out to the school committee and either to me as the chair or Superintendent Burkhead, and we will make sure we try to address every single one of those emails. The next person was Miss Connolly.
Good evening. Maureen Conley. I don't have children in the schools. However, I am a taxpayer. I live on Rachel's Way. And I have to say that I'm very troubled about a lot of things that I'm hearing. I understand from Ms. Brandolini that it was the Mass Association of School Committees that said that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was systemically racist. I would respectfully disagree with that. And certainly Scituate is not systemically racist. Anytime I have looked up the definition of systemic racism, it includes white supremacy. And I think if I asked everybody in this room, if they woke up this morning and said, gee, I feel like I'm a white supreme being, I'm gonna get on with my day because I'm a supreme person. Nobody feels that way. And that's exactly what systemic racism is. And I will say that we have not had systemic racism against Blacks in this country since the civil rights reforms of the 1960s, which was more than 50 years ago. So I really don't understand why this is our focus. And Mr. Hayes, to use your words, I believe that is perpetuating a lie. We are not systemic racist. We are not white supremacist. And our children should not be taught that. They are the future of our country, and that is not accurate information. Also, I don't understand, Mr. Hayes, what cultural shifts that you were talking about over the past year. I will say that education has shifted quite a bit. I'm having a real hard time that the focus is not on academics. We want our children to be academically prepared. Just one more suggestion. I think if each school committee member would have their telephone number and their email address posted, that would be very helpful. Because if you send an email, the school committee really can't get back to you because of open meeting law. You can't have a meeting, before the meeting. So I think individual phone numbers and individual emails would be really helpful. That's what we did when I was on a previous school committee. So
okay, thank you, Ms. Connolly. And I can say that our school committee email addresses are on the school website under the school committee section. You're right, we can't all. A community member could send an email to all of the members of the school committee, that's fine. All of our emails are public record, but you can still send an email to all 5 of us. Typically the chair is responsible for responding to any emails received. And then if necessary, they can always forward the email to the other school committee members so that they're aware of the response. With a couple that I've received over the past couple of weeks, I've worked with Superintendent Burkhead, made sure we had all the information that's accurate and fully answers the question, and then shared it with the person sending the email. So it is definitely something that you can definitely send an email to, and if you reach out and a member of the school committee wants to share their personal phone number with you, they can, but it's not necessarily required. So the next person who had their hand raised was Nicole Grosha.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Long. Sorry, I've been sick in this house, which is why my camera is off.
Nicole Grayshuk. I'm a grade 2 teacher at Jenkins. And I just wanted to say something brief positively about where the district is going. I've been teaching at Scituate Public Schools for 24 years, and I could not be more excited for our future as a district. I want to thank our school committee and our administration for moving forward with our changing society. Since my first day here, a little over 2 decades ago, I've taken my role as an individual who has great influence over someone's whole world very seriously. Right beside helping my students excel to their potential academically has been my goal to help my students excel to their human potential, teaching them to be empathetic and kind humans. The steps we are taking as a district to ensure our students see themselves and others in the larger world in our curriculum will help me as a teacher continue to do just that. I sincerely thank you for your commitment to our students and to this work, both as a teacher and as a future parent at Jenkins next year.
Thank you, Ms. Grayshuk. Mr. Sabatino.
Good evening. Thank you. I was a little bit concerned about some of the comments, and I thought it would be helpful as both the parent of a student at Hatherley School and a teacher myself to help clarify some of those things. For one, the instruction is not teaching anybody that they should feel guilty. It is part of the DESE's World Language New Curriculum that was just passed, I think, last month, that we have to include social justice as part of our instruction. That is part of the curriculum. That doesn't mean that people whose skin tone is similar to mine need to walk around with a hair shirt and beat themselves up over it. The point of all of this is to, just like if you had a leak in your house, you wouldn't ignore it and fail to fix it because you didn't want to make a plumber feel bad. You would fix the leak. You would address the problem. We have noticed that there's a problem in our curriculum, and that problem supports racism. And I understand how it can feel very like you're being attacked. No one believes that anybody wakes up. Well, I'm sure there are some people, but I think the majority of people don't wake up wishing harm on anyone else because of their race, ethnicity, gender orientation, or what have you. But if you ignore the fact that there are subtle and not so subtle things that are baked into our curriculum that reinforce the idea that, well, white people are the only ones who have been sophisticated and have cultures and civilizations and learning, which is not true factually. I mean, our entire mathematical system is in large part thanks to the Arabs. And the wealthiest man in human history was Mansa Musa of the Empire of Mali, and a black man. And just in case anyone was not clear about that, and his contemporaries in medieval and Renaissance Europe knew who he was, and they were in awe, and they envied him. But in our current curriculum, we don't learn about these things. We don't learn about the Tulsa race riots. We don't learn about, the fact that Texas seceded from Mexico because they wanted to keep slavery in Mexico as a way to keep control of them. Said, no, you can't, because Mexico had already abolished slavery. These are just, I'm giving minor points, not the major points, but individual points to point out that we ignore a lot in our curriculum. And the idea that somehow it's dumbing down the curriculum, I don't understand that point of view, because you're giving students more information, not less. And we just heard a new curriculum passed that adds honor courses. So if that is not in pursuit of excellence, I don't understand what would be. And lastly, the school committee, just because I'm a teacher, but I used to be a reporter. And so the school committee can't, sorry, my son is demanding some attention. The school committee can't have back and forth conversations outside of school committee meetings, except for very limited circumstances. So the conversations have to happen here. And I understand why some people feel anxious about that. And I would love to be a person who's open and willing to have a conversation about it. But it's not, I think the idea that we're trying to dumb down the information or not be committed to educational excellence is just, it is not borne out by facts. And also, yes, I will do it, yes. Sorry, I have a son who's autistic, and if he uses language, I have to reward it immediately, or else I'm not gonna get much more language out of him. So here you go. I did it. Okay. The language doesn't say that everybody is walking around with a white hood and burning crosses. That's not what it means when they say systemic racism. It says there are elements baked into our society, our curriculum, our government, our economy. And the idea that racism has not existed since the Civil Rights Act of 1964 it's not factually true. I mean, I'll just give one example. Medical schools even today teach that Black people have a higher threshold to pain than white people. And that has caused a great disparity in the way people are treated in our medical system in the United States. That's just one example, and it still happens today. So we really need to listen when our countrymen, our brothers and sisters are telling us there's something wrong. We need to be open and listen to that. And then if there's a problem, we need to respond accordingly. Thank you very much, Mr. Long.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Adams, you have a comment you'd like to make?
Family, I wanted to address something that one of the speakers earlier has said, that it's good to have Jamil. He's gonna make everything better. I just want to say that that won't be the case. It'll be we. Like I said, always we will do this together. That includes all voices. We have to absorb everyone's voices and be in this together. This evening, we're hearing a lot of this passion. And we all, I believe, want what's best for our students. And I think we just need to continue to move in a direction that allows a conversation to happen. I can't even begin to share how many school districts and the school committees actually don't even get into this lane of conversation, so that our community and the school committee and the community members are here to have this conversation is appreciated. I definitely appreciate that. I will say that one of the things that moved me most was when the community portion of my interview happened. There was over 100 people that were there. I couldn't predict that, and that demonstrates a lot of interest from the community, and that it's important that the position happened, and that's just indicative of the work that went into just even creating the community, creating the position. The other piece I want to stress together, family, I can't stress that enough. We got to do this together. And that doesn't mean we're going to always agree. That doesn't mean that we have to always end up in one being right and one being wrong, but we have to understand we want the same for our students. I also understand that I have a perspective of someone new and have spent some time in all of the schools that has really been a great, I'm only adding on to what folks have said about the year. It's been great to get into the schools and just see the experiential learning. When I went to Jenkins and it was the 3rd and 4th graders office day, and I got to hear stories that, we're talking about animals and how they wrote the stories. They created the covers, the front cover, the back cover, and their own bios. And they spoke about things that included a lot of the topics we're talking about today. I got to sit down on the ground with them and listen to multiple stories. It was fantastic. When I played kickball with the kids and basketball with the kids, that was great. When I learned about again, I want to bring folks back to Wampatuck and that book tournament. That's not light work, family. It takes a lot to make that happen, and for folks to be able to create experiential learning opportunities like that. When I'm at the high school and when I'm in a public speaking class or at a class where folks are talking about, civil rights and things of that nature, it's just not easy to do that. Folks are putting that effort to make that happen. When last week, I was at the Gates Middle School for the, Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Spark Winter, I keep wanting to say winter, but it's Spark Winter, I think, that event. And so it's a combination of science and math and computing engineering, and the students just had all these different inventions that they made that all are games that are based in learning, and they have all kinds of other elements to it as well. And then to get I'm just remembering all kinds of things now. The Cushing Cat that had the dance lessons going on with it there. And then to know that this was the first, Pride Month open mic that happened 2 weeks ago, and folks just sharing incredible narratives about their lives and how it's been impacted by the school. These are just examples of some of the things that we are contributing to in the evolution of the journeys of our students and parents. I mean, I've spoken to a number of parents who will continue to do that. I want to also be a part of creating more opportunities for us to have conversations like this, and maybe get even deeper into some of the weeds of the conversations, because it's important to hear everyone, and to be in that space where it can happen, where it's planned, and folks don't feel that it was a setup or that it was a situation that was unfair, and that there's balance, like was mentioned earlier. So I just wanted to add a little bit of that to it, and just let you know that my experience has been great. I know for a fact that for some folks, it was interesting. For some kids, I was the first Black man they ever seen. And so it was, and I think it was a positive experience for them. Let's continue to create great energy and move in a positive energy. And, positive not meaning we always got to agree, but in knowing that we come from a place of appreciation and love. So I just want to throw that into the mix, and hopefully we'll see each other more frequently to have some discourse on these topics.
Thank you for that context, Mr. Adams. That was great to hear that side of it. Ms. Stanley, I'll give you one more quick chance to make a comment. Before I do, the chat should have been turned off, so I apologize. So that comment will not be in the record at all. But as I said before, we're not going to get into a conversation about Facebook pages. So if you have a comment to the school committee, please feel free to do so. But I want to make sure that that's what the focus is of your comment, and that's for everybody. I'm not singling you out.
Well, it's a little hard not to feel singled out given the context. My only comment is that the comment in the chat is slanderous, and I would prefer it had been removed immediately. And I've never met, as far as I am aware, the person who made the comment. Thank you.
Okay. So as I said, the comment should have been off. I did reach out to Seth about that, but we typically don't allow the chat during our meeting. Okay, so moving on in the agenda, we have our leadership reports, and the first is from Superintendent Burkhead.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Good evening, everyone. I would like to start off by giving an update on our negotiations. This year, all of our unions have agreed to extend the current 3-year contracts, which should conclude at the end of the 21 year to next year. So we'll have to continue those conversations with all that was going on, the multiple MOAs. We extended all those contracts 1 year and have agreed upon that. What we're negotiating now is the cost of living increase for this upcoming year for our 6 unions. I'm happy to report that 4 of our unions have ratified those cost of living increases, which means they've agreed and voted on with their membership. These include paraprofessionals, bus drivers, custodians, and cafeteria employees. The 5th union, our secretary union, has reached a tentative agreement and will be voting tomorrow. The school committee has met tonight in executive sessions, and I've shared with you the updates on each of those MOAs. And we have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday at 6 p.m. I believe that's the only agenda item besides public comment, but wanted to give a little background to our community on the great work that's happening with our negotiations to date with those 5 unions, and update the school committee as well. Next, I have my personal evaluation. I remember It was just last year where my superintendent at the time, and I was a principal, said, you know, tonight I have my evaluation in public. And I remember laughing, and he said, oh, someday it may be you. And so I have that opportunity coming up in July. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'd like the school community to know that as part of that process and evaluation of the superintendent by the school committee, I had prepared for them a comprehensive self-reflection. I want to say that it was one of the best things I've done this year. The self-reflection uses the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education model document for evaluating superintendents. So basically the same document the school committee will use, sanctioned by DESE, I use to reflect on how I thought I did. In the document, I discussed my progress on my 3 performance goals: student learning, professional practice, and the district improvement goals. I know we had talked about goals tonight, and I am extremely proud of the school improvement plans by all principals. I want to give a shout out to Dr. McGuire and Mr. Beatty this evening. And I think Ms. Brandolini pointed out there was a concerted effort to make sure that we refined our focus and our goals this year, and that all principals, central office staff, and including our great educators and teachers, had similar laser focus on their goals at their level, which gets, which moves the, gets the oars in the water and all in the same direction. So we're proud of that fact. Also, a narrative was presented to the school committee to defend with evidence and artifacts my progress. There's also 4 standards that the superintendent is evaluated on. 1 is instructional leadership, 2 is management and operations, 3 is family and community engagement, and 4 is professional culture. We've also, again, provided narratives and evidence for the school committee to assist them in evaluating me. Also made it a purposeful endeavor of mine to be a good communicator and share regularly with our community and school committee. I want to end by saying, as part of the evaluation system, and the best part, I think some of the greatest leaders I've ever met are most critical of themselves. So no matter what the school committee says in July, I've been extremely critical, looking at my assessment with a critical lens on what went well, but also how I can get better personally. I'm an extremely competitive individual. If we're going to be the best school district in the world, we need the best superintendent. And hearing some of the concerns tonight, I want to thank all the speakers. I think we have a lot of work to do to unify everybody. That's going to be one of my goals moving forward. So again, I learn a lot from every meeting. I like to listen a lot, and certainly we'll work on with our staff on ways we can bring everybody together, and so that everyone feels that they're listened to and has a voice at the table. Because we all have the same goal in the end. It's to do what's very best for every single one of our children. So we'll continue to do that. So I look forward to that feedback. I wanted to give you an update on that process to the school community. And again, that I learned from the whole process of reviewing my goals, similar to what we asked of our educators, our paraprofessionals, our principals, our district leaders. I included in my message today, Jamil has said it a lot. I like to say it too. I like to use the pronoun we instead of me. Us instead of I. If you look at a lot of the literature we're sending out, you see the word we instead of I. Even in my self-evaluation, I think I will give a lot of the credit to, probably all of the credit to the team we've built, the work we've done together. Because everyone that's smart enough, that's been in education, knows that no one person can do great things. It takes a whole team. So I hope that's pretty clear to everyone. But DESE, who is, as we know, has been pretty unpredictable with their feedback and their guidance, has come out with some as recent as Saturday. I wanted to share it with our school community for those that may be working this summer in our buildings or may have children coming into the buildings this summer. I just can get that memo. I just wanted to quickly read it. This is right from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We'll be following these protocols. Masking indoors, effective when we get back Wednesday as we begin summer for those that are in the buildings. And maintaining other health and safety guidance is not required, but is encouraged. SC summer guidance is in alignment with state guidance encouraging unvaccinated individuals to continue to mask. The DPH mask advisory advises unvaccinated residents to continue wearing masks in indoor settings and when they can't socially distance. And then for the fall, at this time, all health and safety guidance, including masking and physical distancing, will be lifted by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They will collaborate with the Department of Public Health and issue any additional health and safety recommendations over the summer. We'll be sure to get that information out as it comes. We won't wait till August. If we get something midsummer and it's ready to report, it has an impact on your planning, we will be certain to do so. I guess I'll pause there because I threw a lot at the school committee. If there's any questions on those first couple of bullet points.
I'd like to just comment on the masks for the fall, because I know I've already been asked before school even got out, are we gonna have to wear masks? And you know, fingers crossed that we continue with, you know, the low numbers and, you know, low infection rate, and we'll, you know, nothing will change by September. So that's good news.
Yes, we had, again, this week we had 0 cases in the schools, so I think there was 1 in the whole town. So kudos to everybody, and if that continues, certainly we'll be back to normal as far as the social distancing and not wearing masks. That's the direction right now. Okay, I guess I'll continue on. I don't know if somebody has a vacuum on, but it reminds me when my daughter was a baby, we used to have the white noise. So it's very soothing, whatever that noise is. So please continue. I want to talk about my world tour of the lovely town of Scituate this past week by our resident weather expert and Scituate High School teacher extraordinaire, Mr. Steve McGuire. Beginning of the year, we had talked about him taking me on an in-depth journey of all parts of Scituate. And we talked about maybe it might be better at the end of the year when I, get to learn about all the names, places, and then I'll get to see them for myself. And I did my best during the year to get around town and learn all the places and names. And, Steve and I got in the vehicle, and part of the process was to see how the weather impacts where certain people live. And when we make the call of postponing school and the arduous challenge that some folks in our community have when there's flooding and we have school and they have to go and walk a half a mile to a bus stop. And I really wanted to get that appreciation for those folks. And Steve helped me with that. I learned about the landmarks that I've heard so much about, and it really was just a wonderful thing. It made me fall in love with the town even more. So I appreciate all those folks. I learned about the letters streets. We saw those, the number streets. I think I learned about all the beaches that I someday would love to go to. Mine at Egypt, Sand Hills, and Peggotty we went to. The lighthouse that I see everybody's the pictures of. I often see that. We took a nice closer look. I got to hang out a little bit of the overlook, got out of the Jeep and took a nice deep breath and enjoyed the overlook. He told me the story about why trying to think of the name that why certain places are in certain locations, the 4 cliffs, and overlooking them and seeing why they were named that. South, Northwest, East Scituate, the 3 golf courses in town. I don't golf, but I love golf courses. They're beautiful. I like to see people playing golf because it reminds me of people relaxing. Also, we saw a boat in a yacht club right next to each other. I'd never seen that before. I heard Maria Subs was the place to go to get a sub. I haven't been there, so that'll be one of my summer places, I promise. And best places for coffee, which I'm a big coffee connoisseur, so if anybody has any good advice on that, I would love to hear it. So again, I just want to share that. I know there's been some heavy duty conversations tonight, but we also got to keep it real and keep it, we also have to really talk about the great things about this beautiful town. And being an outsider, my first year on my 356th day, that tour is really awesome to me. So you're blessed to live in such a beautiful town. So thank you, Steve, for that. I'd like to give a shout out to Ms. Hall's junior AP language composition class that invited me to their last week to their speeches. And the topic was what it means to be a good American and how can we move our country forward. I wish some of those students were here tonight to share some of those stories because it was very uplifting to me and promising. And it made me really proud of the fact that America's in good hands. People would often say to me, oh, the kids in this generation, the next generation, right? As you get older, I find myself sometimes complaining like that, right? But when my friends ask me that aren't educated, these darn kids nowadays, huh? I say, no, there's a lot of hope. There's really so much hope. And so I want everyone to stay positive. These kids they really have their heads on straight. They're working hard, and the stories were beautiful. So I want to thank Ms. Hall and that junior class. They let me participate and give feedback from an old timer, and they listened well. And it was really a highlight of my week. And finally, I'd like to conclude by personally thanking the school committee, our wonderful staff, students and families for welcoming me into the district this year. You have my promise that our leadership team will be working relentlessly over the summer to prepare all of our children for a world-class education, the best district in the world. It will take a little time. I appreciate your patience. We will be communicating these details. We can walk and chew gum. We can move our equity and inclusion conversations forward and still have high expectations in academic excellence. And I fully expect that to continue to happen next year. So stay tuned, and we'll make sure that work continues. We have a brand new leadership team in central office that has already hit the ground running and been working night and day to make this happen. So, well, folks, enjoy the summer and get refreshed and relaxed. We will be working hard to make sure that come the fall, we will be prepared and have a plan for your purview, which will include our curriculum and continue to be transparent in what we're doing and answer everybody's comments and feedback. So thank you for the opportunity for my report this evening.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Burkett. And before I open it up to any questions from the committee, so in our email earlier today, we did get that review from the superintendent. I think our plan is to try to do a public session of our review of the superintendent in our next meeting in July, which I think is the 19th. So if people want to put their documentation together and send it to me by, I think, the 12th at the latest, I'll work to compile the information, get it together, and then we'll be able to present it at that meeting. If anyone has any concerns or issues with that, you can reach out to me later on. But since one of our roles as school committee is to evaluate the superintendent, I will, we'll definitely make sure that gets done in a relatively quick time frame. So any questions or comments for Jen?
Mike, I just have a question for you about the form. Are we going to use that same form that we've been using? And if so, can you send us, or have Kim send us like blank ones?
Yeah, so we would use the same form that the superintendent filled out and just put our review of him into it. I'll reach out to Kim tonight and make sure that she gets that out to us.
Well, do you want us to just we can comment on his, if whatever way you want it is easier for you to get the information.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to do our own individual reviews on our own,
Right. Yeah.
No. And then.
Yeah.
I would do it separate from his.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for the superintendent? If there are none, then I'll move on to the leadership report from Dr. Dutch.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So I've been asked to, just trying to minimize, there we go. I've been asked to provide some detail on the elementary and secondary school emergency relief program, which is ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. And I wanted to provide a little bit of context before we get too deep into this so that you understand where these funds come from. So there was ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, and they correspond to the 3 stimulus bills that were generated by the federal government. ESSER 1 corresponded to the CARES Act, which was the first bill, and the town of Scituate, or the school district of Scituate, gets a carve out of funds that the state receives, and that was ESSER 1, and that was $78,000. for FY20, and that was spent before I arrived on curriculum materials, Eureka Math specifically. So that brings us to ESSER 2, which was the second stimulus bill, and that was the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and ESSER 2 was a result of that. And then finally, ESSER 3, which is part of the most recent stimulus bill, the American Rescue Plan, ARP, and ESSER 3 are the educational funds as a result of that. So we'll talk about both of these. So ESSER 2, the dollar amount of funds that the town of the school district of Scituate received is $281,124. We have not requested any of those funds yet. We have not spent any of the ESSER 2 funds. ESSER 3 is $608,905. And again, we have not requested any of those funds. The amounts are tied to our Title I enrollment and our Title I allotment. So our number is relatively small compared to most school districts. So the timelines for ESSER 2, the funds must be spent by September 30th, 2023. For ESSER 3, the funds must be spent by September 30th, 2024. So we have quite a while, and we want to make sure that where the funds are somewhat small comparatively to other towns, we want to make sure we use those funds prudently. So we haven't jumped in too quickly with using those funds. We will be spending this summer to begin to identify needs that we may have for ESSER 2. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can spend those dollars on. Basically, the purpose there is a summary of ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and it's the same regardless of which pot of money we're talking about. So for academics and instruction, it could be spent on high-quality instructional materials like Eureka Math. We look to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, who have identified high-quality instructional materials that we can purchase with these funds. So we'll be trying to identify if we have a need as it relates to materials themselves. It can also pay for professional development for district staff, and this includes culturally responsive practices. The money can be spent on early literacy programming, including tutoring, as well as assessments for the purpose of screening to identify needs that students may have. It can focus on math skill building, which is including high-dose tutoring at all levels, elementary, middle, and 9th and 10th grade high school students. Again, it's not prescriptive. None of this is all-inclusive and limiting, but these are examples of ways that we can use that money. Planning and implementing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs. We've already decided that we would not be using these funds for this summer. We want to continue to look at our data, determine what the needs may be, and make sure that we're able to provide the opportunities equitably when students are a little bit more of a captive audience, and provide some after-school programming if there's a need for catch-up for students who may have fallen behind. And then providing principals and other school leaders with the resources to address individual school needs. So if there's something specific in a building that is needed, they also may make a request that we would then look at as far as determining whether we want to use the funds for that purpose or if we have other resources. Social emotional supports. There is a minimum of $10,000 that must be committed to student mental health services and supports. We're encouraged to spend more than that minimum amount. And I think the focus for that is that if students are experiencing social emotional challenges, then they're not going to be able to access the curriculum and effectively learn. So we need to address these issues initially. These include parent engagement, attendance tracking, and improving student engagement, identifying why they may not being engaged in school. Activities to address the unique needs of low-income children, students with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, foster care youth, as well as reaching out and delivering the services as well. So really focusing on those most marginalized students in our schools. And then to maximize the capacity for the coordination to connect students to the supports that can help them both outside of school as well as inside of school. The money can also be used for operations. That includes educational technology, whether it's infrastructure or Chromebooks, laptops, Wi-Fi devices for students who need them at home, those sorts of things. Supplies and services that enable remote learning, school ventilation improvements, and anything else related to keeping the district facilities sanitized. And then ensuring that we are providing meals for students who are food insecure, technology for online learning, making sure that we're adhering to the requirements of IDEA, which is the federal special education law, and providing educational services. What the districts may not spend ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds on. They can't use it for bonuses, merit pay, or similar personnel expenditures, unless it's related to disruptions or closures related to COVID-19. So for example, we could have used that money to pay for additional nursing staff where we were trying to monitor students on a regular basis. We can't use it to subsidize or offset executive salaries or the benefits of individuals who aren't district employees. We can't do it for consultants as far as their benefits that we may offer them. And then finally, expenditures related to state or local teacher or faculty unions or associations. We can't use the funds in any way related to that particular use. Some additional services. ESSER 1 had a caveat in it that required schools to provide equitable services for private schools. So if we offered Eureka Math and purchased it, we had to offer that to the Inley School because they are in our district and are a private school. And we did that. They opted not to participate. That's not a requirement under ESSER 2 or ESSER 3. There's no need to offer equitable services because they have their own carve out of financial resources from the federal government and subsequently the state. And then ESSER 1 had a requirement that did not allow us to supplant services, but could only supplement. So we couldn't use the money to provide services instead of using our own funding. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 do not have that, so we can use our dollars from the federal government for something instead of using our own funds. So we are allowed to do that as we move forward. Differences between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. ESSER 3 contains new requirements on how the money can be spent and reports and plans that must be made available. So the first is a district plan for safe return to in-person instruction, and I'll go into greater detail on each of these. The second is consultation with stakeholders in the district to determine or identify our priorities. 20% of the money that we're receiving must be spent on mitigating lost instructional time. So we have 10% going to social emotional learning, and then 20% going to lost instructional time. And then a maintenance of equity provision that is required as well. So let me explain what each of those are. So remember, we've not requested a drawdown of these funds from the state, but once we do, within 30 days of receiving the funds, we've got to provide information on our plan for a safe return. Every district in Massachusetts, including Scituate, has already created that plan by March 11th, 2021. We've done that. We're all back in school at this point. Should something happen and we're back to a remote or hybrid model, and we then want to use these funds, we would have to come up with a new plan that we would have to share with the public. So we really met that plan. Robust consultation. So there is a significant requirement to get input from the greater school community on developing a plan that identifies how we're going to use ESSER 3 funds, how we're going to set aside the 20% to address the academic impact of lost instructional time, how we're going to spend the remaining ESSER funds beyond the 30%, the 20% for lost instructional time, and the 10% for social emotional learning, and how we're going to make sure that the interventions we use are responding to the challenges that our marginalized students have, particularly low-income families, students of color, English learners, and you can read the rest of the list. So what does that stakeholder engagement include? So these are the people that must be included in that process. Students, families, school and district administrators, teachers, principals, virtually everybody in the school district, including their union, civil rights organizations in our community, and then stakeholders representing the interests of those children who fall within the categories that are listed there. So you can see it's fairly comprehensive. Its intent is to ensure that we are equitably spending those funds so that all students benefit from those resources. Maintenance of equity. These are guarantees that we make in the process of accepting those funds. And that basically says that we will not reduce our per pupil expense of state and local funds in our high poverty schools. We do not have any high poverty schools in the town of Scituate. So really this does not apply to us. And that also that we would not reduce the per pupil full-time staff in any high poverty school. So again, this does not necessarily apply to us as part of this requirement. So again, I just want to restate, we have not spent or requested any of the ESSER 2 and 3 money. It's our plan to begin to draw down the ESSER 2 money after July 30th for the start of this coming school year, once we've identified what the needs are and what the greatest needs are in the district. So I'll stop sharing at this point and answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dutch, for that detailed presentation. So what I'll do is I'll open it up to the committee to see if there are any questions or comments.
Mike, I had a couple of quick questions for Bob.
Okay.
Bob, is that money being held by the county commissioners?
No, this ESSER money is state-held money.
Okay.
And it's already been allocated to us. It is ours. It will stay there until we make a request. The county commissioners are holding the first stimulus bill money, which was CARES Act money. And we have gotten all of the requests that we've submitted, with the exception of about $9,000.
Okay. And is the spending and reimbursement similar to the CARES Act, where we spend the money first and then ask for reimbursement, or do we come up with a plan and then ask for the money?
We come up with a plan, identify what amount of the money we're going to use, because we don't have to draw it all down at once. And then we do have to make the purchases or expend the funds first and then draw down the money periodically. It's once a month that a particular date and time that you can request your funds for all of our grants, but ESSER in particular.
Right, but, and then just say for, I guess, public consumption is that doing it that way where we have to seek the reimbursement after we spend the money through your diligence and smart management is that it's done at a point in time in the year where that expenditure with our budget and spending provisions of the school committee is that if we spend $200,000 on one of those programs or one of those things, it will not be to the detriment of any other program within the school system.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't be, because the turnaround is pretty quick from when you make the purchase to when the funds can be drawn down. It's usually within 30 days.
Right.
So we would not be without our funds for a very long period of time. And we certainly have, other than if we're doing it at the end of June, we have the cushion mid-year to take care of that.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like, I had a question for Dr. Dutch. So it looks like, can you just tell me a little bit about how this, I guess one of the sides are just all the stakeholders are to be involved, but in reality, or what is the process? Will you and Bill and the team come up with recommendations of where they think or how this money should be spent, and then reviewed by the school committee, or will I kind of want to see operationally how it will work?
So this is for ESSER 3 funds exclusively, not ESSER 2. So to be fully honest, we haven't really crossed that bridge yet.
Okay, so that's just for ESSER 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was for both programs. Okay.
No, it's not a requirement for ESSER 2.
Okay.
But obviously, we'll keep you apprised of how those funds for ESSER 2 are being spent.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
And Mike, I have 2 questions. So, Dr. Dutch, you mentioned that the return to the school plan that we had to vote on in March. If for some reason, we are in the same boat in the fall, were you saying that we have to come up with a new plan and vote on a new plan, or can we use the previous plan?
You can use the previous plan. Remember, it's not to return to school that you have to have the plan. It's to access the ESSER 3 funds. You've got to provide your plan to the Department of Education. So you can use, if you're going to use the same plan, it can be the same plan that you're sharing with DESE.
Okay, and I don't know if you have the answer to this question, but you mentioned SEL and then summer programs, and I was just wondering if what resources are there for families to access the SEL over the summer if they find that some problems might pop up with their students once school's out.
I don't have the answer. I think that may be an answer that could be better provided by either Dr. Bobert or by our new assistant superintendent.
Okay. Dr. Bobert.
Not to put you on the spot, Dr. Bobert.
Okay, sorry, I'm glowing. Exactly, what was your question related to special
So
ed?
I was just wondering, like, now that school's out, and with everything that the students went through this past year, if families find that they might need to access some of the SEL resources, are they available to families over the summer, or how would they go about, who would they reach out to, I guess?
For social emotional. So we're running our special ed summer program, and we do have our both of our district's BCBAs are going to be consulting with their cases and working in some cases like doing like parenting consultation as well. So but not exactly social emotional, but it's within that realm. For some students that qualify, we're also offering a social thinking group. One of those is led by our school psychologist. The other one is led by a teacher. We kind of brainstormed about, did we want to do something this summer? And one of the issues that we found is it's hard to get staff. And so that was another reason why we just decided not to do additional, like for all students, kind of programming. And we also looked into the idea of doing like a social emotional camp and things like that. And the counselors are still, if there was an emergency or anything like that, they're gonna kind of like, they'll be available to touch base with their kids. But there hasn't seemed to be a need for that. If it's a severe issue, there are other resources within the community that families could access. But we did talk about it, whether we needed to set up something. And basically the consensus was that there didn't seem to be that much of a need for it for this summer. I think also with the remote, people are just really not wanting to do more remote, and that was an issue too, and let kids and get back into working or going to camps or other kind of typical activities.
Okay, so we do have places to like direct families if they, we have extra resources to give to them if they reach out.
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly contact me, but I think that most counselors, check their emails and things like that. But if there's, any kind of crisis, I'd be happy to help too.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Drs. Dutch or Bobert? Dr. Dutch, I just had one quick question for you. So the requirements you had throughout your presentation, those are all directly from the state, correct? We have no wiggle room in terms of skipping any of them. It's just you have to meet these requirements for the state, or you cannot use the funds, or you won't be repaid for the funds.
Correct. Those are all state mandated requirements.
Okay, thank you.
They're actually required from the federal government of the state, and the state in turn is requiring them of us.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions for Dr. Dutch, we do not have any minutes to review and approve tonight. In terms of correspondence, so no, we already went over the evaluation that Superintendent Burkhead went over in his leadership report. We did receive an email last week. So there's a Water Resource Commission that has a liaison to our school committee, which is Emily Simmer. I did reach out to the chair, who is Becky Malamet. I don't know if anyone has any interest on reaching out to those people to liaison from the school committee perspective, or if we need a liaison position to that commission, but because they had a liaison position to the school committee, I just wanted to let you know that I'm trying to get some more information on that. And then last week through the town, we did receive the remote participation policy that the Board of Selectmen is using. if people think that we need to have something similar for the school committee, we can definitely look at the policy committee, which I think, Janice, it's still you and I, in making sure that we, if we need one, we have something in place, since the governor's allowance of public meetings being remote goes through April 1st of next year. So I'll let people think on that and get back to me, but if you didn't see it, just want to make sure you knew that it came out last week. So moving on, so I'll go back to you, Dr. Dutch, regarding the warrants.
Okay, we have 3 warrants tonight. The first one is S210603, total of $303,983.92. It was signed by committee member Gates. Of that $303,000, $280,274 were out of our local funds. Of those $280,274, $237,764 were private school tuition, and that was the only large item on that warrant. The second warrant is S210610 in the amount of $187,795.33. Again, signed by committee member Gates. Outside of our local funds, $29,232.60 was spent out of the IDEA grant, which is our special ed grant. And the balance, $155,882.73, was out of our local funds. The large items there were $78,398.65 for private school tuition, $43,965.39 for electric utilities, $13,343.02 for gas utilities. Those were the only large items on that warrant. And finally, the last warrant, S210617, again signed by committee member Gates. The total is $157,828.84. Large items outside of our local funds were paying for the AP exams, $45,291. Those are all dollars revenue that came in that amount, so that there's no net gain or loss with the revolving account that is funded by fees that students pay to take the exams. And then our LEA funds in a total of $79,139.45. And again, the 2 largest items, private school tuition at $19,229.52 and $14,370 for collaborative tuition. And our legal services at $9,580. So those are our large expenditures on that particular warrant. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about those items. We are winding down the fiscal year, and at some point I'll be able to provide you with a final report regarding those funds.
Okay. Are there any questions for Dr. Dutch regarding the warrants?
Mike, if I may. Yep. Bob, do you anticipate any advance payments at the end of the year? Prepays?
There may be some prepays for collaborative tuition. We are waiting for some final bills for private school tuitions to make sure that we're okay to do some prepays for the collaboratives.
And in saying that, I mean, is it a fair statement to say that if we are able to make any prepays, they would probably go there? Is that right?
That's really the only place they can go, the collaborative tuitions.
Okay. thought we'd done some other things in the past, but I don't recall. The other thing, and maybe this is a future agenda item, Mike, but do you have any information on any of the bids for our capital expenditures and where those stand right now?
I do. I had sent an email. The Wampatuck Portico received one bid. It was about $40,000 more than the appropriation from town meeting. And the locker room project received no bids. So the plan is to go back out to bid with those. As Superintendent Burkhead and I spoke today regarding this issue. And he asked why I thought that may be. And I think part of it is the economy and the amount of work out there that's available for contractors. But I also think that we had put some time constraints on it. We wanted to make sure it was done by the end of the summer. And I think given the time frame that we put the bid out and the time frame we were looking for the work to be completed may have been off-putting to contractors who have lots of other options available to them. So we're going to try and spread out those and reconvene the committee that was looking at the locker room in particular to see if it's something we can do during the school year so that we're not trying to squeeze it into just a vacation period in the summer. The other projects that are up for this summer, as I mentioned, were the parking lot at Wampatuck, which will go out after July 1st because the funds aren't available till then. And then we've got a small bathroom project that's an old capital item at the Cushing School that we will get completed this summer as well. So that's kind of an update on those projects.
And if I may, one more, it's more of a procedural question. The fact that the portico bid came over what was allotted and that there were no bids on the locker room project, does that mean we are now exempt from putting those out to bid?
No. Anything over $150,000, you've got to do an RFP, a request for proposals, regardless of whether you got no bid or not. And at no point are you able to just give the work to somebody.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Mike, I just have one, maybe you and I collaborative, but I think that only because one of the warrants has a recent large bill for legal expenses, I think that our 1-year contract is up with our representation. So do we need to revisit them and ask for the new contract? I think it's July 1, might be September 1.
Yeah, I'm not sure offhand. Superintendent Burkhead, do you know when that expires, or can we just take a look at that later this week?
Yes, I can get that out to you this week.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Was that to me, Pete, or to
No, it was to Chairman Long.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, my internet went out.
That's right. It was just regarding the new contract for our attorney, because I know that last year with the pandemic, it just did a 1-year extension. So
right.
I just didn't know that. I didn't know when it was up for renewal. I assume it's July 1st, but I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't remember offhand, but I'll work with Superintendent Burkhead, and then we'll respond. But someone will respond out to the committee.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Dutch. Is there any other business that the committee wants to bring up?
Mike, I just wanted to mention that myself, Jamil, and Mike Hayes met quickly sort of last Friday, and we were it was in response to an issue brought up in our last meeting about who sits on what DEI committees and subcommittees and how that kind of currently pans out and the history of it. So we just decided that Mr. Adams will lead all the school-based DEI advisory groups as we kind of had hoped for. And that's it, right? If Mike or Jamil want to add anything, but it was pretty cut and dry.
Any work we can shove off to our administration is definitely the way to go. But congratulations, Mr. Adams. Anything else from the committee? So as Superintendent Burke had mentioned, the agenda went out earlier today, so we do have a meeting on Wednesday just to discuss and vote on the 5 MOAs with 5 out of our 6 unions. That's the only item on the agenda besides public comment. And then we'll meet again, I believe it's July 19th, where we'll also do the superintendent's review. So if there's nothing else that anyone wants to bring up, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:32.